Chapter 1. The cliff was thousands of meters high, dotted with small trees that swayed tenaciously in the wind. The top of the cliff was flat and open. It was a man-made platform. A small figure was sitting lazily on the edge of the cliff under the afterglow of the setting sun. His two legs dangled boldly on the edge of the cliff, swaying unconsciously, looking particularly lonely. This was a teenager of 16 or 17 years old, with light, broad eyebrows and a pair of slender eyes. He seemed to be habitually squinting his eyes, giving people a feeling that he was not fully awake yet. The outline of his face was very clear, as if it was carved by a knife or an axe, revealing a sense of fortitude. Because he was not an adult yet, he looked a little immature. However, if one looked closely at his eyes, one would notice a trace of vicissitudes in his eyes. This world is so King abnormal. Even the time is different. I don't even know how long it has been. 3 years or 4 years. This place only has 2 seasons. Warm season, winter season. Sigh, I can't go back. The teenager sighed and hammered the ground. Looking at the fist print on the green rock, he smiled again. There was almost nothing in this world that he was satisfied with. Other than power, there was no entertainment in this damn place. Every day, he had to think about eating and looking for anything that could fill his stomach. That was the meaning of living in this world. A sharp whistle sounded, and the youth suddenly jumped up and ran along the top of the cliff. His speed was incomparably fast, and in a moment he arrived at the corner of the cliff. There was a stone fort there, and it was a stone fort that protruded 7 or 8 meters from the cliff. 2 large men were standing in the small stone fort. This stone fort was very small, long, and narrow, and it protruded out of the cliff. The top of the fort was made of logs. On the ground, there was a 3-meter-long and 2-meter-wide hole, through which one could clearly see the bottom of the cliff. A metal frame was placed on the hole, and a giant wheel was installed on top of it. A man with a big beard saw the teenager come in and said, "Fong, the hunting team is back. You have good eyesight. See if there is anything wrong." The young man nodded. He reached out to hold the wheel and looked down. He saw a few small black dots below. His eyes suddenly flashed, and a faint silver light appeared. The young man said happily, "Uncle Ku and the others are back. Quickly, put the basket down." The bearded man reached out and grabbed an iron ring. With a pull, a huge, hanging basket loosened and appeared at the entrance of the cave below. The 2 men began to roll the wheels and lowered the hanging basket. The basket was 3 meters long, 2 meters wide, and 1.5 meters deep. It was a rectangular basket that was used to transport people and supplies. A few hunters and a Fong laughed as they carried the game into the castle. Tiger Cliff Castle's terrain was very steep. It was surrounded by cliffs and cliffs. In the middle was a depression with a radius of 2 kilometers. Therefore, there was a piece of land that could be planted. The people of Tiger Cliff Castle lived in the caves under the cliffs. Every family occupied a cave. There were natural caves and man-made caves. Outside the caves were wooden huts. During the warm season, they could live in the wooden huts. Once the cold season came, they had to live in the caves to pass the winter. The entire terrain of Tiger Cliff Castle was like a flat bowl. The residents lived in the bowl. The outer walls of the bowl were the cliffs. This was a natural large defensive fortress. Therefore, everyone came down from the cliffs and quickly arrived at the residential area. A Fong carried a wild boar leg in one hand and 2 pheasants in the other. He quickly walked towards his house. Soon, they arrived at a house with a wooden fence. It was a small courtyard and a small hut on the cliff. A little girl saw Fong return and happily said, "Big brother, big brother." She shouted as she ran over. The weather was starting to get cold. The little girl wore a short fur coat. Her long fur danced as she ran, like a small ball of fur rolling over. Afong smiled and said, "Don't run. Slow down, slow down." He squatted down. Because he was carrying something in both hands, he couldn't carry it. The little girl rushed into Afeng's arms and hugged his neck. Afong stood up with the little girl hanging on him. She giggled and said, "Big brother, whose meat did you take this time?" Afong used his forehead to touch the little girl's forehead and said dotingly, "It's Uncle Ku's game. Is Grandpa okay?" The little girl giggled and said, "Grandpa went to boil salt. He just came back." Tiger Cliff Castle had a specialty product, and that was salt. There was an underground brine mine that extracted brine from the ground and boiled it to produce salt. There wasn't much of it, but it was enough for the residents of Tiger Cliff Castle to live. This was also one of the main reasons why the people of Tiger Cliff Castle could live in the depths of the mountains and possess a brine mine. Chapter 2. The cooking of salt was mostly done by the elderly or the women. Basically, it was enough as long as there was enough to eat. It was very difficult to communicate with the outside world. Everything was self-sufficient. Everything had to be done by oneself. This made Afong very uncomfortable. Fortunately, after a few years of suffering, he had gradually gotten used to it. The little girl was hanging on Afeng's neck. The two of them walked into the hut while talking and laughing. Afong said loudly, "Ayi, I'm back. Look, this is the front leg of a buck-toothed boar from Uncle Ku. It's about 30 pounds. It's enough for us to eat for a few days." It was an old man who was sitting on a short stump with a leather bag in his hand. When he saw the two of them come in, his eyes flashed with joy. He coughed and said, "Well, Afong, rest for a while. You must be tired." The little girl slid down from Afong and ran to the old man's side. She hugged the old man's arm and squatted down. She said happily, Yi Aunt Ching sent me a piece of bull skin. I kept it in the cave. It's a big piece. Brother's armor only needs one more piece. In a few days, the leather armor will be completed. Hee, Ayi, I can do it." She looked at him with a praise me expression. Afong couldn't help but laugh. "Ha ha, little sister is really capable." Afong praised first. The old man gently touched the little girl's head and nodded. "Yes, our family's Yao Yao is the most capable." The little girl suddenly smiled. The so-called leather armor was a protective equipment that every hunter needed. The leather armor here was special. It was completely handmade from various kinds of animal skins. The inner hard leather armor was made from the locally produced bull skin. The crafting of the leather armor was very complicated. There were dozens of procedures. As early as 2 years ago, the grandfather had started making it. A large part of it was the little girl's work. The grandfather and granddaughter worked together until recently. It was almost completed. Because they were lacking a piece of bull skin, it was not completed yet. This set of leather armor was specially prepared for Afong to go hunting. Every hunter in Tiger Cliff Castle had to have a set of leather armor made by their family before they went hunting. This was a custom here. Once the leather armor was worn, it meant that Afong could officially go hunting. The leather armor used a total of 3 kinds of leather. The innermost layer was a special kind of soft leather. This kind of leather had countless soybean-sized bubbles inside. Not only was it unusually soft, it also had excellent cold resistance. The middle layer was the hard leather of a bull, and the outer layer was the skin of a fierce beast called the long-haired wild boa. The long-haired wild boa had hair that was more than a foot long. After tanning, it had great toughness. When making the leather armor, the long hairs on the skin were woven together to form a pattern. Then, A type of animal fat was applied to it. Not only was it warm, but it also had good protection. A Feng's leather armor was personally designed by the old man and made together with his little granddaughter. The little girl's task was to weave the long hairs on the wild boa skin. The old man said, "Yao Yao, give this boar leg to your Aunt Ching." After taking someone's bull skin, they had to show some appreciation. Even though the front leg of a buck-toothed wild boar was not worth mentioning, it was still a token of their appreciation. The old man had always been very careful in this aspect. The little girl hesitated for a moment. Her face showed a trace of reluctance, but she still nodded. "Okay, Ayi, I'll bring it over now." Even though she was only 6 years old, lifting a 30 kilograms boar leg was effortless for her. A Feng watched the little girl leave. After a moment of silence, he said, "Ayi, you have something to say to me?" The old man nodded. He was very pleased with A Feng's cleverness. He said, "A Feng, you're not young anymore. You're 16 this year. You've been training since you were 6 until now. Your foundation is not bad. You can take the next step and officially start practicing Lunli." A Feng was stunned. He had been here for almost 3 years. Even though he practiced martial arts, archery, and his body every day, this was the first time he had heard of Lunli. He asked, "Lunli, what is that?" He had been trying to understand this world, trying to find out how big it was. However, this place was too isolated. It was impossible to get any information, especially since there were almost no outsiders. He could only see the nearby sky and not know what the outside world was like. The only thing he could clearly understand was that this was definitely not his hometown from his previous life. Every night, 7 moons would appear in the sky, each with different colors. From this, he could deduce that this was a foreign world. Other than that, he did not know much about anything else. The old man said, "Lunli is a miraculous power. Not everyone can cultivate it. You must have the talent and potential to cultivate it. When you were 6 years old, I had already tested you. You have the talent and potential to cultivate Lunli." A Feng was stunned. He had always suspected that there were many things in this world that he did not know, but Lunli was still beyond his imagination. He said, "Does anyone in Tiger Cliff Castle have Lunli? Who is it?" The old man said, "Yes, your parents have it. Other than them, no one else has it. Of course, the people here do not know that your parents have Lunli." When A Feng's soul took over his body, he had not seen his parents in this world. He had only seen his grandfather and little sister, so he had no impression of them. He said, "Oh, is that so?" The old man said, "Don't underestimate Lunli. Once you practice it, not to mention normal people, even the barbarians in the mountains, are no match for you." The barbarians were also humans, but they were born with great strength. They were generally tall and strong, with the shortest being 2 meters tall. Their bodies were covered with thick black hair, and their physique was closer to that of wild beasts. In the mountains, they were the top hunters. Not only did they hunt wild beasts, they also hunted humans. They would even hunt barbarians from other barbarian tribes and eat them. They were the hunters' biggest enemy because they had a certain level of intelligence. The old man said, "Wait a moment, I have something for you." He got up and walked into the inner room, which was also the cave. He lightly tapped on the stone wall and soon found a place. Using a dagger, he inserted it into a thin crack and pried it open. He took out something and then returned to the wooden house. A Feng's eyes fell on the old man's hand and said, "Yi, what is it?" The old man gently stroked the item in his hand. After a while, he passed it to A Feng and said, "This is a seal. Take a look." A Feng was puzzled. Seal? He did not understand at all. He took the seal and examined it carefully. It was a round object, about a finger thick and the size of a palm. It was black in color and mixed with countless silver lines. The lines were like the veins of a tree leaf, with different thicknesses. The fine lines were like hair, and there were traces of silver light. The thick lines were as thick as a toothpick, twisted and extended. The seal was very heavy. Although it was only the size of a palm, it weighed about 7 or 8 pounds. Afong said, "What a strange seal." The old man said, "Look at the silver lines. What does it look like?" Afong looked left and right. After a while, he said, "It looks like the veins of a tree leaf. No, it looks like lightning." His mind flashed, and he remembered a picture he saw in his previous life. This was a picture of lightning, but the lightning was too dense. Chapter 3. The old man's face showed a gratified expression. He said, "Not bad. This is a Lei-in, and your Lunly attribute is lightning. What's more precious is that you have a single lightning attribute. You can practice Lei Lunly. Hee. Afong held on to Lei-in. He said, "Oh, sure enough, it's a little numb." Just as he finished speaking, there were traces of lightning jumping around Lei-in. Afong was not a local. He didn't know much about lightning, but in his previous life, he knew what lightning was. It was electricity. It could kill people. He was so scared that he raised his hand and threw Lei-in away. The old man shouted, "Hold it and don't move. Don't let go. Lei-in is enlightening your Lunly." Afong, after 3 years of living with his grandfather, has completely seen him as his own family, his own elder, so he suppressed the uneasiness in his heart, both hands tightly holding onto Lei-in. Lei-in started to make slight crackling sounds. It made Afeng's scalp numb. He said, is this okay? This thing, so numb." The old man stared at Afeng's hands. He said, "Don't be scared. Steady. Don't let go." Afong didn't dare to throw Lei-in. He could only brace himself and hold on tightly to Lei-in, following the slight crackling sounds. The lightning from Lei-in started to flow into Afeng's body. That kind of numb feeling made him extremely uncomfortable. He stuttered, "Yi. When will it end?" The old man said, "It's still early, don't let go." As the electricity flowed in, Afeng's shoulder-length hair stood up one by one. He couldn't see, but the feeling of holding on to Lei-in was definitely uncomfortable. The little girl Yao Yao came in, shocked. "Brother, what happened to you?" The old man said, "Don't touch your brother. Come to Yi. Be careful not to touch it." The little girl's face was pale. She looked at her brother's hair, which was as dense as grass. His head seemed to have grown several times bigger. She ran to the old man's side and sobbed, "Yi, what happened to brother?" She was brought up by Afong single-handedly, so their relationship was very deep. Seeing her brother's strange appearance, she felt extremely uneasy. The old man hugged the little girl and whispered, "Don't disturb your brother. Just watch. Your brother will be fine." The crackling sound grew louder. Afong could no longer sit still. He stood up and stood in the middle of the room. His body kept twitching from the electric shock. His face was red, as if he was being roasted by fire. As the electric arcs flickered, he finally couldn't hold on to Lei-in anymore. His hands trembled as he said with difficulty, I can't hold on. The old man suddenly shouted, "Don't throw me. You can let go." Afong hurriedly let go, but Lei-in didn't fall. Instead, it hung in front of his chest, emitting countless silk-like electric currents. It was like a net that covered Afeng's body. The little girl, Yao Yao, bit her finger nervously and said in horror, It's glowing. It's so strange." She was so frightened that tears flowed. The old man said in a deep voice, Hold on. Don't be afraid. You won't die." Suddenly, Lei-in moved. As Lei-in circled Afong also began to move. It wasn't that he wanted to move, but that he was stimulated by the electric current. The little girl Yao Yao stopped crying because Afong was too strange. He raised his hands and legs, shook his body, and kept twitching. That strange appearance left her dumbfounded. After a while, she whispered, "Ayi, what's wrong with brother? He seems to be dancing." The old man said, "That's right, this is thunder dance." A Feng howled in his heart. "Damn it, what is this thunder dance?" "This is the standard rag dance." Damn it, I can't control my body." A big split, followed by his body unimaginably turned half a circle, and then his whole body maintained the big split, strangely standing upright, one leg on the ground, the other leg pointed to the sky, his body twisted out of shape. A finger-thick electric current hit A Feng's lower back. He quickly turned 7 or 8 circles. A Feng couldn't even scream. His mouth was numb. He was dizzy and disoriented, passively doing this strange thunder dance. "Yow, yow," almost bit her finger. She exclaimed, "Wow, brother is so awesome." A Feng howled in his heart again. "Awesome my ass. Brother is hit by electric current. Damn it, it's killing me." Along with A Feng's thunder dance, a strange heat flow inside his body. A Feng's body became stronger little by little. A strange energy was generated inside his body. A Feng understood. Perhaps this is lonely, but he couldn't move. He was still dancing with the electric current. Lei Yin's body couldn't be seen anymore, as if he was a shining sun emitting electric current, so dazzling that the old man and Yao Yao squinted their eyes. Suddenly Lei Yin pierced A Feng's chest. In a moment it entered A Feng's body. Pung! A Feng fell. He didn't care about his image as he laid on the ground, crazily gasping for breath. At this time, the electric current had disappeared. Lei Yin had also disappeared. The old man showed an extremely shocked expression. He didn't think that Lei Yin could enter A Feng's body. This was simply unimaginable. He nervously observed for a moment, and finally confirmed that there was no danger. Then he let out a big sigh of relief, softly said, "You're lucky. I didn't think that the compatibility would be so good. This talent is really scary." A Feng smiled bitterly. My whole body is numb. I can't move." The old man laughed. He said, "Good, good, very good." A Feng's heart was gloomy. He secretly said, "What good? I can't even move. And you still say good. Are you Ai?" He didn't know that he had already gained a big advantage. Lei Yin's level was so high that it was unimaginable it could actually merge into his body, although temporarily he could only use a trace of power, or even not a trace of power, but it had brought him unimaginable benefits. He didn't understand this, but the old man understood clearly. The wrinkles on the old man's face were like flowers blooming. He seemed to have put down the heaviest burden. His mood relaxed. It made him seem a lot younger. The little girl wanted to support A Feng. The old man hurriedly stopped, said, "Don't touch your brother." But brother is still lying on the ground, although A Feng was electrocuted. But seeing Yao Yao's eyes full of worry, his heart also hurt. He said, "Yao Yao, don't be afraid. I'm fine. Just now, brother's dance, was it good?" The little girl chuckled. Once her worry disappeared, she recalled A Feng's appearance just now. She couldn't help but to laugh. Brother is really too funny. Seeing Yao Yao laughing, A Feng's mood also better. He said, "Ayi, when can I move? Do I need to do anything?" The old man stopped laughing, seriously said, "Lie down, now no one can touch you. Whoever touch you will be beaten. Your body needs to completely adapt to Lei Yin, and maybe 1 day, maybe 3 days, depending on your potential. Of course, your potential has already surprised me. If you can surprise me again, then it will be perfect." Chapter 4. A Feng smiled bitterly. Potential. Sigh. The little girl Yao Yao ran into the cave and quickly came back with a large piece of animal skin. "Ayi, this is for big brother." A Feng was touched. The little girl was so sensible that it made his heart ache. In his previous life, the little girl of 6 or 7 years old didn't know anything, not to mention taking care of others. She couldn't even take care of herself. But in this world, the little girl was already acting like an adult. The old man took the beast's skin and gently covered Ah Feng's body, saying, "Don't worry, After absorbing the lightning stamp, you can truly start cultivating. Before, you were only training your body and didn't touch the level of cultivation. After passing this hurdle, you will step into a new world that you have never been to before. A phone was also looking forward to it. If I can cultivate Lunley, does that mean I can walk out of the mountains and see the outside world? The old man laughed. Haha, of course. Do you want to be like this old man and die of old age in this godforsaken place? The aura that was released in that instant stunned a Fong. That kind of arrogant aura made a Fong understand one thing. This old man was not simple. He must be someone with a story. The little girl was finally tired after being tormented for so long. She leaned on her grandfather, her little head nodding nonstop. A Fong said, Ye take little sister to bed. We can talk more. He couldn't move, so he wanted to talk to the old man to try to find out more about Lunley and training. The old man nodded, carried Yao Yao into the cave, and placed her on the stone bed, then came out and sat beside a Fong. Ask what you want to know. A Fong said, Yi, do you also have Lunley? The old man sighed. I didn't have Lunley before. I had Inli, but I'm just a normal person now. A Fong was stunned. Inli? What's that? The old man said, You don't need to know now. Let's put it this way. Inli is too far away from you. You don't need to pay attention to it. A Fong asked, Why did your Inli disappear? The old man's eyes revealed a trace of bitterness. After a while, he said, Why did he disappear? He was beaten up by someone. Ha! I can only hide in this damned place and want to raise a descendant. That's all. You don't need to ask too much, my enemy, unless you reach a certain level. This is probably too difficult, so I don't have any hope. A Fong thought for a moment and said, Lunley, what is it? The old man was stunned by his question. He had never considered this question before. Lunley could be obtained through cultivation. As for what it was, he didn't know. After thinking for a while, he said, What Lunley is, I can't say, but I know that once you cultivate the first ring of Lunley, you will have the power of one Lunley. A Fong wryly smiled. He didn't know what the power of one cycle was. He hesitated for a moment and said, The power of one cycle? Then he would have the power of 2 rounds, maybe the power of 10 rounds. The old man suddenly smiled and said, Your perception is not bad. Not bad. The power of one cycle is only the beginning. Relying on the power of one cycle, you can cultivate more Lunley. Not only can you cultivate the power of 100 rounds, you can cultivate the power of 1,000 rounds. When you reach the power of 10,000 rounds, you will have reached the next level. With the power of 10,000 rounds, you will be Wan Luan Shi. One more step, and you will be a mill wheel master. A Fong was shocked. The power of 10,000 rounds. Then what kind of power was the power of one cycle? Even if the power wasn't great, but if there were 10,000 rounds, what kind of concept was that? His heart was burning. Mill wheel master? The old man nodded and said, That's right, mill wheel master. If you can reach this level, you can walk out of this land, walk out of this mountain, and welcome the outside world. A Fong said, How long will it take to reach the level of mill wheel master? Even if I can cultivate Lunley now, it will only be the power of one cycle to reach the power of 10,000 rounds. Isn't that a bit scary? He suddenly had no confidence. The old man couldn't help but laugh and said, It's not that hard, especially for people with outstanding talent. With the right training method, they can improve very quickly. When you reach the power of 100 rounds, you can truly experience the power of Lunley. When you reach the power of 100 rounds, you can be called 100 Luan Master. You can become 100 Luan Master first. A Feng's mind was in a mess. He said, Okay, when I can move, I'll cultivate and see. The old man said, You rest first. I'm tired too. I'm going to rest. He got up and walked into the cave. A foam laid on the wooden floor, with a thick beast skin covering his body. The feeling of exhaustion washed over him like a tide. In a moment, he fell into a deep sleep. This sleep lasted for 2 days and 2 nights. A foam finally woke up. He opened his eyes and saw a small head with a pair of pure big eyes. He couldn't help but smile and said, Yao Yao, why are you here? The little girl jumped into his arms and choked. Brother, you slept for 2 days. I was scared. A foam lightly patted her back and comforted her. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. I'm awake now, right? Ha ha. The little girl didn't say anything and just hugged him tightly. The old man came in from outside and said, A foam, since you're awake, then get up. I've made some meat soup. Eat some, and then start your first training. Yao Yao, don't bother your brother. The little girl obediently agreed. She got up and said, Brother, get up too. I'll go boil some water. She skipped and ran out. It was obvious that the little girl was in a very good mood. Afong sat up. This sleep had completely awakened him. The numbness brought by Layin had completely disappeared. He only felt that his body was full of strength. This feeling was something he had never felt before. He stood up and stretched his body. All the joints in his body made a crackling sound. This kind of extreme comfort made him want to moan. Although he had been training before, he had never felt so clearly powerful. Step by step, he walked out of the hut and came to the courtyard. The old man was standing under the big tree in the courtyard. His face was full of smile. When he saw Afong walking out of the hut, he waved his hand and said, Come and eat something. Under the big tree, there was a stone table with a clay pot. Afong smelled a strong aroma. The little girl carried a big wooden plate. On top of the plate, there was a stack of tapioca flour powder. This is one of the local staple food. It was made from tapioca flour and rice flour. There was also a kind of plant and fruit mixed together. After being baked, the taste is quite good. At least Afong felt that it was better than the pastries made from flour in his previous life. Afong didn't hesitate. After sitting down, he began to eat. He was really hungry. He didn't eat anything for 2 days and 2 nights. He was really hungry and thirsty. Outside the courtyard, there was someone calling, Yao Yao, Yao Yao. Yao Yao ran to the door and opened it. She saw a little girl around 10 years old standing outside. She happily said, Sister Xiang Xiang, why are you here? Xiang Xiang was the neighbor's child. In Tiger Cliff Castle, Yao Yao only had one friend. She turned her head to look. Afong smiled and waved his hand, indicating that she should go play. She then smiled and said, brother, I'm going to play with Xiang Xiang. At this moment, she showed the liveliness of a child. Chapter 5. The 2 young ladies left hand in hand. Afong sighed and said, There are too few people here who can play with Yao Yao. The old man didn't say anything. Afong suddenly thought of something and asked, can Yao Yao practice Lunli? The old man nodded and said, I tested her. Yao Yao can practice Lunli, but she's still young, so she has to train until she's 16. Afong said, Does she have to go through Layin too? The old man didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, Do you think Layin is so easy to get? And Yao Yao's attribute is completely different from yours. You practice Lunli. Her attribute is green wheel, not thunder wheel. Afong was confused. Green wheel? What does that mean? The old man said, Will of life, it's also a rare attribute, completely different from yours. Afong said, how many types of wheels are there? The old man said, There are many, such as fire wheels, silver wheels, golden wheels, wind wheels, light wheels, dark wheels, and so on. There are also the rarer ice wheels, green wheels, thunder wheels, moon wheels, and so on. Yours is a special thunder wheel. Ah Feng said, so many wheels. What the F asterisk CK? I thought everyone was a lightning wheel. The old man laughed and said, ha, nonsense. There's a lot to pay attention to. Don't talk about the rare thunder wheel. I'm talking about a single wheel, which is a single attribute. The people who tested originally didn't have many wheels, and most of them had multiple wheels. Ah Feng said, what do you mean by multiple wheels? The old man said, it means that you have more than one wheel of attributes. For example, someone has fire wheel and silver wheel, that's a dual attribute. Of course, dual attributes are not bad, but most people have 4 or 5 attributes. Once you have more than 4 attributes, although you can still practice, your growth will be extremely slow and you won't be able to reach the level of a mill wheel master. Ah Feng immediately understood. He said, the more focused you are, the faster your cultivation will be. The old man nodded and said, yes, you should know that a person's life is limited. An ordinary person's life is only about 50 years old. Very few people can live until they are 60 or 70 years old. If you can't cultivate to become a mill wheel master in this limited time, then everything will be in vain. Ah Feng said, becoming a mill wheel master can extend one's life. The old man replied, of course, to be able to cultivate Lunley, you can live to at least 70 years old. To become a mill wheel master, you can live to at least 90 years old. Ha! When I say 90 years old, I mean at least 90 years old and still be able to maintain your youthful vigor. Ah Feng suddenly thought of a question and said, Ayi, how old are you? The old man was silent for a moment. After a while, he said, Ah Feng, don't worry. I should be able to see you cultivate to become a mill wheel master. He thought to himself, if it wasn't for the continuation of my bloodline, I wouldn't be struggling so hard to live in this world. I've lived long enough. Although I've lived for more than 500 years after being injured, I don't have many years left to live. However, I'm still much stronger than an ordinary person. I should be able to see Ah Feng grow up. If I can pass this hurdle, perhaps my fate will be very different. Although he thought so, he also knew that this point was very difficult to achieve. Otherwise, he wouldn't be hiding in this remote and desolate place. Of course, Ah Feng didn't know that the old man had lived for hundreds of years. Even if he told him, the old man probably wouldn't take it seriously. To be able to live for hundreds of years, that person wasn't human, but a monster. He couldn't understand. He said, okay, Ayi, you have to wait until I cultivate to become a mill wheel master. He hoped that Ayi could live to 100 years old. As they spoke, Ah Feng had already finished all the food. He wiped his mouth and said, Ayi, teach me how to cultivate. The old man said, follow me. He walked out. The grandfather and grandson walked all the way up to the cliff. After walking for about half an hour, they arrived at the top of the cliff. They walked along the cliff for some distance. The old man said, this is the place. It's more secluded here. No one should come here. It's good to cultivate here. Ah Feng looked around. This was a pile of rocks, all of which were as tall as a few people. No one would come here, not even children. It was a very secluded and safe place. He said, okay, then let's cultivate here. How do I do it? The old man said, sit down cross-legged first. There are some things I want to tell you first. I hope you can understand. His serious look made Ah Feng also become serious. Ah Feng said, Yi, tell me. The old man nodded. Thunder wheel is a very rare attribute. I won't hide it from you. I cultivate thunder wheel. You must have received my blood to have such an outstanding attribute. Ah Feng saw the old man's pride. He nodded and listened carefully. The old man said, there are two great benefits to having a lightning wheel. Firstly, the lightning wheel has an extremely strong attack power and is one of the highest level of Lunley. Secondly, the training speed of the lightning wheel is extremely fast. The best place to train the lightning wheel is during a thunderstorm. Absorbing the power of lightning can increase the training speed and also increase the chances of breaking through the bottleneck. Afong was shocked. This was asking to be struck by lightning. Of course, he knew the consequences of being struck by lightning during a thunderstorm. It could kill. In the memories of his previous life, there were many who were struck to death by lightning. Struck by lightning? The old man said, "Nonsense. Struck by lightning can kill." Only then did Fong feel relieved. Humans shouldn't be able to withstand the lightning from the sky. He had misunderstood and thought that one would definitely die from being struck by lightning. In fact, even in his previous life, many people survived from lightning strikes. The old man continued, "Of course, there are benefits, but there are also drawbacks. The drawback is, once you cultivate Thunder Wheel, your personality will gradually change. Your temper will become relatively irritable and even wild." Afong was stunned. After a while, he said, Your temper is very good. I don't see you being irritable." The old man was very kind to him. He had never even yelled at him. The old man smiled bitterly and shook his head. Ever since his cultivation was broken, his temper had completely changed. He used to be a temperamental and scrupulous person. His personality was even more irritable. If there was a disagreement, he would start a fight. Ever since his cultivation was broken, he had completely calmed down. After these years of peaceful life, he vaguely felt that if his cultivation was not broken, if he could calm down, he might be able to break through. Unfortunately, he never got the chance. "It's a pity that I can't cultivate anymore." So Afong said, "I'll control it." The old man shook his head and said, "If you can't control it, it won't be compatible with the Thunder Wheel. If you want to quickly advance, you must open your heart and follow the Thunder Wheel all the way forward. Remember, you don't have time to waste. You must advance to Mill Wheel Master in the shortest time possible." Afong didn't have any concept of Thunder Wheel cultivation. He could only listen to what the old man said. He understood that the old man's experience could save him a lot of detours. "I understand. Don't control it. Let the Thunder Wheel rush forward." The old man smiled and said, "Well, let's start cultivating." He explained in detail how to cultivate and the things to pay attention to. Finally, he said, "Lei Yin will enter your body. It shouldn't be difficult for you to cultivate because you have already passed the most difficult stage. I didn't expect that you would be able to absorb Lei Yin into your body. Your luck is really good. Let's begin." Chapter 6. Afong thought to himself. He didn't think that Lei Yin would be so crazy, making him lie in bed for 2 days and 2 nights. Following the old man's instructions, Afong sat cross-legged and began his first practice. The old man took a few steps back and sat down, staring at Afong. This step was very important, especially for the first practice. He hoped that Afong would be able to cultivate more Lunley. After a few minutes, Afeng's body emitted a crackling sound of electricity. The sound was very soft, and if you didn't pay attention, you wouldn't be able to hear it. The old man's face lit up with joy. This proved that Afeng's practice was going very smoothly. The feeling of numbness came again. Afong knew that he did the right thing. Because the old man had explained it in detail, he was confident and continued to practice. Slowly, Afong immersed himself in the practice. Arcs of electricity appeared on the surface of his body, especially on his hands, feet, and most importantly on his head. The crackling sound of the electricity became louder and louder, gradually turning into a hissing sound. The electricity jumped out and formed a small ring on top of a Feng's head. It floated up and down, and from time to time, electricity would fill it up. The old man knew that a Feng's first Lunli was about to form. Once it was absorbed into his body, it meant that he had the power of the first Lunli. At first, the ring formed by the electricity was not stable, but as time passed, the ring became brighter and brighter and became rounder and rounder. Countless tiny electric arcs jumped on the ring, and the Lunli kept expanding and contracting. After 10 minutes, the Lunli ring suddenly shrunk into a blinding light spot and instantly disappeared into a Feng's head. The old man clenched his fist tightly. He was secretly excited. The first Lei Lunli was produced so easily. When he tried to condense his first Lei Lunli, he had to sit at the edge of the thunderstorm for a whole night before he barely succeeded. No wonder he was integrated with the lightning strike. His potential was unparalleled. The second Lei Luan force ring only took 5 minutes to condense. After forming 10 Lunli rings in one breath, the old man said in a low voice, "Okay, too much is as bad as not enough. Gradually get used to the feeling of Lunli in your body. Follow what I said just now. Continue to train the Lunli in your body until you can completely control it." The old man's voice was slightly trembling. He was so excited that he was about to fly. What kind of concept was this? He used to have a single lightning wheel aptitude and was called a genius. He used 3 days to reach the power of one wheel and 1 day to control it. He used more than 30 days to reach the power of 10 wheels. This had already shocked many people. However, this grandson of his had only used less than 4 hours to reach the power of 10 wheels. This was 2F asterisk king frightening. I have a successor. I have a successor. Who knew that I have such a genius grandson? Ha! 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 The old man was ecstatic and laughed wildly in his heart. Feng naturally didn't know what the old man was thinking. He also didn't know that Yi was about to go crazy from joy. He was only focused on training the 10 Lunli in his body. Because he had Lei Yin, he didn't need to spend too much effort. Lei Yin was also training the Lunli in his body. He only needed to control it well. Normally, when a practitioner was training Lunli, it couldn't be seen from the outside. This was especially true for those who hadn't reached 1,000 Lunli. Only those who had reached 1,000 Lunli would have their Lunli appear on the outside. But Feng had only reached 10 Lunli, and the Lunli was already on the outside. The old man could clearly see rings of Lunli flickering outside Feng's body. From time to time, there would be blinding flashes of light. From time to time, there would be electric arcs bursting out. It was a shocking sight. After an hour of training and control, Feng felt that he had complete control. He stored the Lunli. According to the old man's teachings, there were a total of 6 places to store Lunli. The most important was the chest, followed by the hands and feet, and the last was the head. However, the head could store the least amount of Lunli. Because he had only reached 10 Lunli, Feng stored 1 Lunli in his head. His hands also stored 1 Lunli in each. His legs stored more Lunli. Each leg stored 2 Lunli, and his chest stored 3 Lunli. The reason why there were more Lunli in his legs was because of the old man's teachings. This way, he could run faster. After distributing the Lunli, Feng suddenly had a new discovery. He exclaimed, "What the hell? What is this?" The old man said, "What? There seems to be a round hole in my body. How can I feel it so clearly? Is this real or fake? So strange." Feng said with uncertainty. The old man laughed. "Not bad, not bad. 10 Lunli can indeed be produced. Feng, don't be surprised. This is a hidden Luan space. After 10 Lunli, it can be produced. And "How big is your hidden Lewin space?" A phone carefully sensed it and said, "At most the size of an adult's fist." "And what is a hidden Lewin space?" The old man said, "To you, a hidden Lewin space has no meaning at the moment. Wait until you reach 10,000 Lunley, then it will have some use." 10,000 Lunley, the hidden Lewin space in your body, can reach 2 feet in diameter. You can store some things. When you become a mill wheel master, the diameter can reach 1 meter, and you can store many things. Hee, so don't mind it too much. The hidden Lewin space in your body can't store anything. It's too small. Afong was shocked. Storage in his body. It was beyond his imagination. He said, 1 meter in diameter. Will it burst my body? He didn't understand at all. The old man laughed. That's impossible. It won't appear outside your body. After thinking for a while, he said, actually, you can store some things. For example, some extremely small Lewin weapons can be stored in the hidden Lewin space. Afong heard something new and said, Lewin weapons? The old man said, and Lewin weapons are the weapons of people who have Lunley. Of course, Lewin weapons are also determined by their attributes. For example, if you have Ley Lunley, you must use a Ley Lewin weapon. You can't use a fire Lewin weapon. Just having Lunley is not enough. You must know how to use it. There are many ways to use it. There are 2 most important ways. One is to directly use Lunley. Through combining Lunley, you can increase the power of your Lunley. The other is to use a Lewin weapon. A Lewin weapon can carry your Lunley and amplify its effects. Afong said, where can I get a Lewin weapon? He looked at the old man expectantly. The old man said, a Lewin weapon, one is to use your own Lunley to make it. This is not difficult. Anyone who has Lunley can make their own Lewin weapon. Of course, you must find the appropriate materials. There are many ways to make it. Some are simple, some are special, and some are extremely difficult. The simple ones are very simple, the difficult ones, it requires a certain amount of luck, other than finding the way to make it. You must also find the appropriate materials. For example, this is a type of Lewin weapon. A needle appeared in the old man's hand. It was a jet black needle. It was about the size of a large sewing needle. He said, explosive needle. It can only be used once. Use Lunley to activate it. Afong took it and looked at it curiously. On the jet black needle, there were a few strands of silver. It was such a thin needle, but it weighed a few taels. He said, how do I use it? Chapter 7. After the old man said a few words, Afong was shocked. That simple? I just need to activate it. Can I kill a bull? A bull was a good thing. Its entire body was a treasure. Its horns could be made into bows. Its meat could be eaten, and its meat was delicious. Most importantly, its hide was an important material for making armor. In this area, it was a hard currency. A bull's body was strong, and one bull could weigh a few tons. Once it was activated, it could even break a tree. Even barbarians would need a few people to hunt a bull. As for the hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle, if they didn't gather a few dozen hunters and set up a trap, they wouldn't dare to attack. So in Afeng's mind, a bull was an extremely fierce animal. Even though it wasn't a carnivore, it wasn't easy to provoke. Even though he had a lot of strength in this life and could even leave a mark on a hard rock, he understood the fierceness of the animals here. The old man shook his head. You're already different from normal people. Animals like bulls can't threaten you. If you use a lightning needle against a bull, that would be a waste. I only have 4 lightning needles here. Keep them for self-defense. Unless it's a last resort, don't use them. I don't have the ability to condense lightning needles anymore. Afong held the 4 lightning needles and said, can I put this in my hidden Lewin space? Even though his hidden Lewin space was small, it shouldn't be a problem for him to store 4 lightning needles. The old man nodded. You can try. Store the lightning needles in your hidden Lewin space. A Feng stared at the lightning needle in his hand. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. The lightning needle in his hand suddenly disappeared. Then, he clearly knew that a lightning needle appeared in his hidden Lewin space. He couldn't explain why, but he clearly knew that the lightning needle was in his hidden Lewin space. The lightning needle appeared in his hand again. Very quickly, he skillfully stored and released it. He laughed. This is a good thing to use against people. Even if he was caught, they wouldn't be able to find the lightning needle. At a critical moment, this thing could save his life. So a Feng solemnly stored the lightning needle. He said, "How do I make this thing?" He thought that if he could cultivate, once a battle broke out, an explosive lightning needle would be very useful. The old man said, "Exploding lightning needle. You still can't make it. Without the power of 1,000 chakras, don't even think about it. After the power of 100 chakras, you can make your own chakras. At this time, you still can't do it, but you don't have to worry. With your cultivation speed, you should be able to reach the power of 100 chakras very quickly. The strength of 100 Lun is the first bottleneck of a small Lewin master. The strength of 1,000 Lewin and 10,000 Lewin are the bottlenecks of cultivation. You don't have to worry about these for now. Just focus on cultivation first." A Feng didn't mind. He said, winter is coming soon. If we don't go hunting this winter, it will be hard for us to survive. Let's prepare for the next few days. I plan to go hunting with the hunters in the castle." The old man said, "And for your first hunt, you can go with the hunters in the castle. In the future, it's best if you go hunting alone, because you are already a small Lewin master, not a normal person. As a person with Lunli, you must have your own pride and dignity." A Feng nodded. He kind of understood the old man's meaning. He said, "I need to gain some knowledge about hunting. Then I'll go hunting by myself." The old man said, "Go back. In the future, as long as you are in Tiger Cliff Castle, you can come here to cultivate." There were 2 main surnames in Tiger Cliff Castle. One was Hu, the other was Ku. Other than a Feng's family, most of the people in Tiger Cliff Castle had these 2 surnames. As for a Feng's family, their surname was Lei. They were outsiders. A Feng's name was Lei Xingfeng. The old man's name was Thunderstorm, and the little girl's name was Lei Xingyao. Actually, the old man named a Feng because the real meaning was Lei Xingfeng. However, because a Feng's father was adamant about it, he changed the name to Lei Xingfeng. It was too abnormal for a good child to be named Lei Xingfeng. The old man didn't insist and decided to change the name. Tiger Cliff Castle had more than 10 hunting teams. The hunters here were at least in groups of 3. The strong ones were few in number, and the weak ones were many. After a few days of cultivation, the Lunli in Lei Xingfeng's body had reached more than 30 Lunli. Basically, he could increase his Lunli by 10 Lunli every day. This allowed his strength to increase very quickly. He couldn't wait to find Uncle Ku and wanted to join his hunting team. Uncle Ku's name was Kudashin. He was a simple and honest man. His hunting ability was very famous in Tiger Cliff Castle. He was the leader of the 3-man team. He had always taken good care of Lei Xingfeng, so Lei Xingfeng wanted to join Uncle Ku's team. This team had a lot of hunting experience and was very familiar with the area. Kudashin was also very simple and honest. Lei Xingfeng had always admired him. These few days, Thunderstorm brought his granddaughter Lei Xingyao and Lei Xingfeng to make Lei Xingfeng's leather armor. The leather armor was very exquisite. It mainly consisted of a breastplate, 2 arm guards, a pair of leather boots with a deep waist. The top of the boots could directly cover the knees, and a leather cord to tie the hair around the forehead. When a Feng put it on, he suddenly looked like a different person. He looked very murderous. Lei Xingyao tilted her head and looked at it for a moment. She then picked up a dagger and helped a Feng put it into the leather sheath at the side of the boots. She then tied the cord and fixed the hair. The old man carried a leather backpack in one hand and a black longbow in the other. A Feng was surprised. "I'm using this bow." This black longbow was made by the old man. In a Feng's memory, the old man had been making this bow for at least 4 years. As long as he had the materials, he would make it until last year. At that time, a Feng hadn't practiced Lunli yet. He tried once, but he couldn't pull the bow at all. He didn't even know how strong the bow was. The old man said, "The bow you practiced before was too weak. You could only shoot normal animals. If you met a fierce beast, it wouldn't work. Only this bow can bring out your current strength." Lei Xingfeng was happy. "Ayi, you think I can use this bow now?" He knew that the old man had spent a lot of time and effort on this bow. His heart was full of expectations for this bow. Lei Xingyao bit her finger and said, "Brother, you try. See if you can pull it." Ah Feng nodded and tried to string the bow. The bowstring was made from the tendons of a bull and the silk of a large spider. There were a total of 2 strings, one for reserve and one for personal use. Ah Feng knew that his strength had increased tremendously. He had tried to string the bow a few times in the past, and it had been extremely strenuous. Now he could easily string the bowstring onto the black bow. Lightly pulling the bowstring, a buzzing sound could be heard. Ah Feng had practiced archery for a long time. From the age of 6, he had practiced with a small bow until he was 16. His archery skills were quite high, but he had never been able to use a real hard bow. This black bow was even more abnormal. Before, he couldn't even pull the bow fully, let alone aim and shoot. With a bit of strength, the black bow was pulled fully. He released his fingers and heard a sound like the sound of metal clashing. Pung! Chapter 8. A Feng couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow, this thing is powerful." After practicing Lunli, he was indeed different. Whether it was his strength or his body's toughness, they were all greatly improved. Lei Xi and Yao clapped. "Wow, that's amazing. I'll go get the arrows." She ran back to her room and came out with a quiver of arrows. There were a total of 10 arrows, which were also made by the old man. They were made of steel arrow wood, and the arrowheads were made of pure steel, the length of a finger. They were very heavy, and each arrow weighed 1 jin. It was not something that could be shot from a normal hard bow, and only this kind of black bow could be used. Carrying the quiver and backpack, carrying the black bow, Ah Feng bid farewell to the old man and little sister. He went to the cliff alone. Uncle Ku and the other 2 were already waiting there. They had to store enough food before the winter arrived. Every family in Tiger Cliff Castle had 1 or 2 hunters. Some families had no hunters. They relied on planting cassava and rice to store a large amount of food during the warm season. They relied on the food to exchange for prey. Relying on the various wild animals within a few hundred miles of Tiger Cliff Castle, life in Tiger Cliff Castle was not difficult. Ku Dashan saw Lei Xingfeng come over and smiled. Feng, how was it? Were you scared?" Old hunters would always ask this question when hunting for the first time. Lei Xingfeng smiled. "Uncle Ku, Uncle Nanshan, Uncle sure I'm not scared. Hee, I'll be with everyone from now on." Ku Dashan, Ku Nanshan, and Ku Shur, the 3 of them were very famous in Tiger Cliff Castle. The 3 of them practically watched Lei Xingfeng grow up and liked him very much. Ku Dashan patted Lei Xingfeng's shoulder and said, "Let's go. This time we won't go far. We'll just move around Tiger Cliff Castle and see what we can get." The 4 of them came to the protruding part of the cliff. In the small stone fort, they sat in the hanging basket and slowly descended to the bottom of the cliff. It was Lei Xingfeng's first time outside of Tiger Cliff Castle. It wasn't that he didn't want to go out, but children who hadn't reached adulthood weren't allowed to leave Tiger Cliff Castle. Aside from the various wild beasts, there were also barbarians. If one wasn't an adult hunter, entering the forest would be suicide. Every year, hunters from Tiger Cliff Castle would die while hunting, so the hunting team was very cautious. If they were weak, they would hunt near Tiger Cliff Castle. Only the strongest hunters would dare to hunt far away. Since Lei Xingfeng had joined the team, Ku Dashan decided to hunt near Tiger Cliff Castle first. After testing Lei Xingfeng's strength, they could decide where to hunt. As a newbie, Lei Xingfeng did not have the right to speak. He could not say that he was strong enough to hunt from afar. Hunters were very practical, and those who were not practical were all dead. Although Lei Xingfeng was a newbie, he had lived in Tiger Cliff Castle for 3 years and had seen many things. He was no longer a child and knew more than the people here. He had his own thoughts and his own understanding of the world. Ku Dashan had 4 short steel spears on his back and a 2-foot-long machete in his hand. This was used to open up a path. Ku Nanshan was a strong man. He carried a steel spear, a longbow, and a quiver of arrows. Ku Shi, on the other hand, carried a large leather shield. The base of the shield was made of steel wood, and the outer layer was made of cowhide and long-haired wild boar skin. Its defense was quite good. As the team's defender, Ku Shi had great strength. His weapon was a 2.5-foot long triangular steel spear. Lei Xingfeng was a pure archer and was mainly responsible for long-range attacks. The 4 people in the team had a clear division of labor. Ku Dashan opened up a path in front, and Ku Shi followed closely behind. Once there were wild beasts, he was responsible for blocking them. Ku Nanshan carried his spear and followed behind with Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng carried his black bow. Other than 10 specially made arrows, he also had a few ordinary steel wood arrows. The arrowheads were only ordinary iron arrows and could only be used to target normal prey. They were useless against powerful wild beasts. Other than opening up a path, Ku Dashan had been paying attention to Lei Xingfeng. From time to time, he would remind him softly and teach him some basic hunting knowledge. In fact, Lei Xingfeng had already learned the relevant knowledge. He only needed to practice a little to quickly get into character. The group of 4 quickly disappeared into the boundless primeval forest. Dazzling, after Lei Xingfeng entered the forest, the only feeling he had was dazzling. It seemed that there were animals everywhere, and there were noises everywhere. This was because after he practiced Lei Lunli, it gave him this ability. No matter if it was his hearing, vision, perception, or strength, all of them had been improved. This made him feel extremely confused. He had not fully adapted to the changes after the improvement. Every hunting group had their own hunting grounds. Ku Dashan had chosen a pond. All animals needed to drink water, so the pond was a good place to hunt. Of course, this place was also extremely dangerous. No one knew what kind of powerful wild beasts would come. Some wild beasts were not something that ordinary hunters could handle. This was a kidney-shaped pond with a large shoal. According to Lei Xingfeng's estimation, it was about 1 square kilometer. A part of it went deep into the forest. When they were close to the pond, Lei Xingfeng already felt extremely uneasy. He could clearly feel the danger in front of him. This was one of the best hunting grounds near Tiger Cliff Castle. When they were close to the pond, Ku Dashan signaled everyone to stop. He whispered, "Nanshan, little Shi, a phone, be careful. I'll climb up the tree." As he spoke, he put his machete back into his belt, jumped up, and grabbed onto a thick tree. He quickly climbed up like a monkey. Lei Xingfeng held a special arrow in one hand and a black bough in the other. He was surrounded by dense branches and leaves, so he couldn't see far. However, with his Lunley, he could clearly feel the movements around him. Nothing could escape his sharp senses. He tried his best to adapt. Kushur placed his shield in front of him and tightly held his triangular steel spear. He tilted his head and tried to listen to the movements in front of him. The three of them formed a triangular defensive formation. Each of them was responsible for the front and waited for Kudashin's news. After a while, Kudashin climbed down the tree silently and whispered, "Follow me." Soon, the four of them arrived in front of a huge ancient tree. Lei Xingfeng looked up and said in surprise, "There's a treehouse here." Kudashin nodded. "This is a hidden spot. Most of the hunters who come here to hunt would know this place. Let's go up and rest. The hunt starts in the evening." As he spoke, he took the lead and climbed up. Lei Xingfeng carried his bow and climbed up as well. The tree house was about 20 meters from the ground. It was a very high place. No one knew who built it. Although it was simple, it could shelter them from the wind and rain. The tree house even had a small wooden platform. From there, they could clearly see the activities of the animals around the pond. Lei Xingfeng saw a large herd of bulls drinking water. He said in surprise, "A herd of bulls?" Ku Nanshan laughed. "Don't even think about it. Even the barbarians wouldn't dare to provoke such a large herd of bulls. Once these things go crazy, no one would dare to stop them. As long as you don't get out of their path, you're dead." Lei Xingfeng stared at the herd of bulls. As long as he could kill one of them, his harvest would be huge. He couldn't help but want to give it a try. Kushur had always been a man of few words. He suddenly said, "Stop dreaming." Chapter 9. Lei Xingfeng smiled bitterly and said, "Don't you guys want to hunt a bull?" Kudashin explained, "That's impossible. If you want to hunt a bull, you need at least 15 to 30 people. You also need to set up a trap, and the terrain must be favorable. Most importantly, someone must lure the bull. It's too dangerous. No one will provoke a bull unless they have no other choice." Ku Nanshan also explained, "The bull's skin is too thick and too tough. It's very difficult for weapons to pierce through it. There are very few weak points on the bull's body that can be attacked. For example, the bull's eyes are its weak points. There's a weak point below its abdomen. There's also a weak point between the two protruding parts on its back. But it's very difficult for you to attack it. That's why when a hunting group of a few people meets a herd of bulls, they will avoid them." Lei Xingfeng didn't agree. He probed, "Can't I attack from the tree?" Kudashin patiently explained, "Even if you attack the bull's weak point, without a certain amount of strength, you still can't pierce through the bull's skin." Ku Nanshan said, "Even if you have enough strength to pierce through it, it may not be able to kill it in one hit. You won't be able to attack a second time before the bull is out of your attack range. Afong, you're not thinking of hunting a bull, are you? Haha. It's good to be ambitious, but you have to know your limits." The three of them didn't agree. They thought that Lei Xingfeng was overestimating himself. Lei Xingfeng didn't argue anymore. Instead, he quietly watched the herd of bulls drinking water by the pond. Kudashin said, "Afong, come and eat something. Take a rest. We still have to hunt in the evening. Replenish your energy and physical strength. Otherwise, it'll be very dangerous." Lei Xingfeng returned to the treehouse, took out the jerky from his backpack, and ate it bit by bit. After finishing the food he brought, Kudashin lay down and closed his eyes to rest. Ku Nanshan and Kushur leaned against the wooden pillars and closed their eyes. Only Lei Xingfeng returned to the platform of the treehouse and continued to observe the herd of bulls. He was still unwilling to give up and hoped to kill a bull. He had great confidence in his Lunley. If he could find an opportunity, he would definitely attack without hesitation. At this time, the herd of bulls began to move away from the pond. Lei Xingfeng turned around to look at the treehouse, his heart filled with regret. He knew that there was no chance to attack, so he let out a long sigh. He removed the black bough from his back and placed it beside him, thinking, I can only wait until evening to see what I can harvest this time. Suddenly, Lei Xingfeng noticed that a small herd of bulls was heading in his direction. He immediately became excited and hurried back to the treehouse. There's a herd of bulls coming. Wake up! A herd of bulls is coming. Ku Dashan lazily said, There's nothing to be surprised about. A herd of bulls, at least a dozen of them. You won't be able to deal with them. He didn't even open his eyes. Lei Xingfeng said, How would we know if we don't try? I'll deal with them. Ku Nanshan couldn't help but laugh. Hee, this little guy is really aggressive. All right, let's see how a foam hunts. The three of them laughed and got up to the platform, sincerely wanting to see how this stubborn child would be rebuffed. They watched as the herd of bulls leisurely walked over, nibbling on the leaves and weeds along the way. Bulls had many natural enemies, but very few beasts dared to attack a herd of bulls. To kill a bull, it was best to wait until it was alone or when it was old and sick and couldn't keep up with the herd. These kinds of bulls were the targets of hunting, whether it was hunters or large carnivorous beasts. They all understood this simple principle. Ku Dashan said, Do you use a bow? Lei Xingfeng nodded. Yes, I'll try using a bow. He was full of confidence in this black bow, and he firmly believed that this black bow wasn't something that an ordinary person could pull. Its attack power would probably surprise him. Ku Nanshan and Ku Shi both smiled. Both of them understood bulls very well. They had also successfully hunted bulls before, but they had never seen a person successfully hunt a bull alone. They couldn't be blamed for being narrow-minded. After all, a hunter who had never left the mountains would never imagine that there was another kind of person in this world, a person who could control Lunley. The world they came into contact with was too small. The herd of bulls took a full half an hour to reach the tree. Looking down from the platform of the treehouse, they could see the backs of the bulls flickering in and out of the trees. Ku Dashan and the other two laughed and looked at Lei Xingfeng. Ku Nanshan even whispered, You can shoot now. Hee. The three of them smiled. Lei Xingfeng nodded. He held the black bow and inserted the arrows that were specially made by his grandfather into the wooden planks of the platform. He spread his legs, one foot on the platform and the other on a tree branch as thick as a bucket. Below him was the herd of bulls. Lei Xingfeng grinned at the three of them, then knocked an arrow and pulled the bowstring. The black bow was silently pulled back. Ku Nanshan was also an archer. He looked at the black bow in surprise and couldn't help but whisper, Good bow. It should be known that a normal bow, if it was a hard bow, would make a creaking sound. However, Lei Xingfeng's bow didn't make a single sound. He didn't believe that Lei Xingfeng would bring a soft bow. A soft bow could only shoot birds and rabbits. Lei Xingfeng wasn't an idiot. If he used a soft bow to hunt bulls, that would be too stupid. In an instant, Lei Xingfeng pulled the bowstring. He had already caught sight of the depression in the middle of the bull's back. That was the bull's weakness. His eyesight had always been the best. He was famous in Tiger Cliff Castle. Everyone knew this. He could see things very far away. This was his talent. Holding his breath, suddenly there was a metallic sound. Bang! The three of them didn't even see the arrow fly out. There wasn't even an afterimage of the arrow in their eyes. One could imagine how powerful the arrow was. Moo! More than half of the 1 meter long arrow sank into the bull's back, leaving only the tail. The bull only cried out once before it knelt down, instantly entering a state of near death. This arrow didn't even startle the herd of bulls. Kudashan, Kunanshan, and Kushur saw it clearly. Kunanshan rubbed his eyes hard. After a while, he clutched his chest and said, how is this possible? Lei Xingfeng didn't say anything. He pulled out another arrow and pulled back the bowstring. Bang! Another crisp sound rang out. Moo! Another bull knelt down. Kudashan's eyeballs were about to fly out of their sockets. When did the bull's hide become so weak? Kunanshan and Kushur couldn't even speak. They looked at the two kneeling bulls and then at Lei Xingfeng. Their eyes were filled with shock. Lei Xingfeng pulled out the third arrow. Kudashan hurriedly stopped him. Afong, stop! Don't shoot any more. 2 is enough. Any more, and we can't transport it back. Actually, they couldn't transport the 2 bulls back either. A bull weighed a few tons. It was impossible for the 4 of them to carry it back. Lei Xingfeng finally reacted. He sighed and said, "What a pity." As he spoke, the herd had already passed. The 2 bulls were already breathing out more than they were inhaling. Kudashan waited for a moment before saying, "Let's go down." His tone was already filled with excitement. What a joke! The horns and leather of the 2 bulls were already worth a lot. There was also a large amount of meat. The 4 of them happily went down the tree. They all knew that they had to move quickly. Fortunately, killing a bull in one shot caused very little bleeding. Therefore, the smell of blood was also less. If there was more blood, the smell of blood would be heavy and would quickly attract powerful wild beasts. Therefore, the 4 of them had to move quickly. Chapter 10. When the 4 of them arrived at the side of the bulls, the 2 bulls were already dead. Kunanshan jumped on the backs of the bulls, and only then did he clearly see the arrow feather outside. Only the arrow feather was still outside, and the whole arrow was almost 4/5 of the way in. He said in horror, "How much strength is needed to shoot it so deep? Scary." Kudashan said, "Quick, tie the bulls up. We'll deal with them after we get up to the tree house." With the faint smell of blood, this place was getting more and more dangerous. Lei Xingfeng first pulled out the arrow from the bull's back. He couldn't bear to waste this kind of special arrow. After a bit of fixing, it could be reused. He then grabbed the bull's hind leg and tested it. He said, "Uncle Ku, you guys tie up that bull first. This one, I'll try." Kudashan asked curiously, "What are you trying?" Lei Xingfeng didn't answer. He reached out and grabbed one of the bull's hind legs. This time, he used a bit of Lunley and shouted, "Hey!" He actually dragged the bull and walked towards the tree step by step. Kudashan said in shock, "What the hell?" Kunanshan clutched his chest and said, "This kid, how does he have so much strength?" Kushur shook his head and said, "Monster." The next scene made the 3 of them even more speechless. Lei Xingfeng actually dragged the bull up the tree. That thing weighed a few tons. The appearance of this kind of inhuman strength made the 3 of them even more stunned. Lei Xingfeng still had the time to talk. He said, "Uncle Ku, you guys have to hurry." Taking out the prepared bowstring, he tied one end to the bull's hind leg and the other end to his wrist. Lei Xingfeng then forced himself to climb up the tree. Using his Lunley, Lei Xingfeng felt that his whole body was filled with strength. Grabbing onto the protruding branches of the ancient tree, his fingers actually pierced into the tree trunk and dragged the bull up bit by bit. Kudashan shook his head. He felt that Afong was too crazy. He actually dragged such a heavy bull up the tree. This kind of inhuman strength was too frightening. Kunanshan said, "Okay, stop looking. This kid is not human. Let's move faster." Kushur also said, "Quick." He started to tie up the bull while Kudashan climbed up the tree. His speed was very fast. he quickly surpassed Lei Xingfeng and reached a huge tree branch. He then threw down a rope and used the sturdy branch to hang the bull up. Lei Xingfeng dragged the bull up the tree. In fact, it was very strenuous for him. After all, the bull was not light. Relying on his lunli, he forcefully dragged the bull up to the platform of the treehouse. Then, he helped Ku Dashin and the others to drag the other bull up. They did not dare to put this bull on the platform of the treehouse. It was too heavy. They were afraid that it would break the branches under the treehouse, so they put the bull on the branch at the side. The four of them were tired and sweating profusely. Each of them did not care about their image as they rested in the treehouse. After climbing up the tree, they felt more at ease. Even if some wild beasts could climb up the tree, they did not have to be afraid. This place was different from a peaceful place. Wild beasts were not their opponents. After resting for 10 minutes, Ku Dashin said, "Nan Shan, be on guard. We will move." The bull was hunted by a Feng alone. He will take the skin and horns. The meat will be divided among the three of us. Lei Xingfeng said, "There is no need to divide it like that. Let's divide it equally. If Uncle Ke did not bring me out, I would not have been able to hunt this bull." The hunting team of Tiger Cliff Castle was usually not willing to bring in newcomers. This would mean that their harvest would be reduced. So it was already not easy for Ku Dashin to bring him out. Ku Dashin said, "How about this? You take a complete bull's skin and horns. We will divide the rest equally. Don't decline any more. We have already taken a big advantage." Ku Nanshan and Ku Shi nodded in agreement. Other than Nanshan, the three of them began to skin and cut the meat. They took out a large wooden basin from the treehouse. Ku Dashin used a sharp knife and began to skin the bull. The smell of blood immediately filled the air. A complete bull's skin was hung on a branch. It needed to be dried for at least 2 days. It also needed to be smeared with tree sap to eliminate the strong smell of blood. 2 horns that were 2.5 feet long were cut off from the bull's head and placed aside. Ku Nanshan suddenly said, "Be careful, a big leopard is coming." Lei Xingfeng looked down. On a tree not far away, a black leopard was staring at them. He was surprised to find that this leopard was different from the one in his previous life. Its body was stronger and bigger. It was at least 4 meters long. He knew that leopards were experts at climbing up trees. He stopped and reached out to grab the black bough. Ku Dashin said, "Don't be nervous. A Feng, throw the bull's organs down. If there is food, it will not come up." Xian Feng nodded and immediately poured the barbarian bull's innards down. With a pi pi pa pa sound, large pieces of the innards fell to the ground. In just a few breaths of time, a few roars could be heard. Xian Feng noticed that there were not only leopards below, there were also other carnivores. Sounds of fighting could be heard as the black leopard on the tree disappeared. After dealing with the 2 bulls and the fresh meat, the 3 of them began to salt it. Then they hung the meat piece by piece in the treehouse to dry. As for the bones, they threw them under the tree for the animals to eat. Only when the sky turned dark did the 4 of them stop. Ku Dashin and the others began to set up traps on the trees. Night was the peak period for all kinds of wild beasts. These dried barbarian beef were the best targets, so they had to be prepared. Lei Xingfeng did not stay in the treehouse. Instead, he climbed to the top of the tree. He had to seize the time to cultivate. Of course, he had to hide this from Ku Dashin and the others. After finding a very wide branch, Lei Xingfeng sat down and began to cultivate. The next morning, the 4 of them woke up. This night, countless wild animals wandered around the tree and made all kinds of strange sounds. Lei Xingfeng did not sleep well at all. Fortunately, he had Lunley to nourish his body. The next day, he was still full of energy. Kudashin laughed. How is it? It's your first night in the wild. Are you not used to it? Lei Xingfeng said, It's okay. It's okay. It doesn't affect much. Ku Nanshan looked at Lei Xingfeng's energetic appearance and could not help but praise. A Feng was born to be a hunter. I didn't expect such a strong person to join our hunting group. This year's harvest must be not small. Ku Dashin laughed. If those hunting groups that rejected a Feng knew that a Feng was so strong, they would probably regret it. Ku Nanshan said, Let's transport some of the things back first. This place is very close to Tiger Cliff Castle. We can get back in half a day. At this time, we can hunt a lot of bulls. With a Feng here, we can store enough meat for the winter. Ku Dashin nodded. We'll leave 2 people to guard, and the other 2 to transport a few trips back and forth. It should be enough to send the meat back. The bull's meat was marinated and dried. After losing its moisture, the weight would be reduced by a lot. In addition, the bones were removed and only the meat was left. The meat from 2 bulls could be finished in a few trips. Actually, the most valuable part of the bull was the 2 pieces of bull's hide and the 4 horns. They could be exchanged for a lot of food and meat. Ku Nanshan said, Kashur and I will go back first. Dashin, you take a Feng and guard here. The people here were very strong. It was normal to carry 2 to 300 pounds of things. Everyone had a large rattan basket that could carry about 300 pounds of meat and 2 horns. This trip, Ku Nanshan and Kushur would go back first, and then Ku Dashin and Lei Xingfeng would go back. Taking turns, they could finish transporting very quickly. Chapter 11. The 4 of them started to pack up. First, they stuffed the big pieces of meat into the basket and prepared to leave. Ku Dashin and Lei Xingfeng followed them down the tree to guard against attacks from wild animals. Suddenly, Lei Xingfeng said in a low voice, Something's coming. At that moment, the others became nervous as they all took up their weapons. Xian Feng extended his hand to grab his black bow. An arrow knocked on the bowstring as he stared to the side. With the sound of a bird chirping, a human silhouette appeared, and 2 men appeared with weapons in their hands. When they saw the encirclement formed by the 4 of them, their expressions changed. Ku Dashin's expression changed. He said, F***CK, it's Lead Eagle's people. Ku Nanshan and Kushur's expressions changed. Lei Xingfeng's expression changed too. He had lived in Tiger Cliff Castle for many years and knew that Lead Eagle and Tiger Cliff Castle were archenemies. Nothing good ever happened when the hunters from both sides met. They had always killed and harmed each other. The 2 families had been archenemies for hundreds of years. Many hunters from Tiger Cliff Castle had died at the hands of Lead Eagle's hunters. No hunting team would want to meet Lead Eagle's hunters. The only result was a fight to the death. There was no other choice. That was why they were so nervous when they saw Lead Eagle's hunters. When Ku Dashin saw that it was Lead Eagle's hunters, he shouted without hesitation, Kill! Lei Xingfeng was trained in Lunley, so his reaction was very fast. After Ku Dashin shouted kill, he shot an arrow. The arrow was too fast, and its strength was unimaginable. Just as the bowstring made a metallic sound, the arrow had already pierced through a person's head. In the blink of an eye, the arrow pierced through the head and shot into the trunk of a large tree. Even with the head blocking the arrow, 1/3 of the arrow had sunk in. Before the other party could react, the second arrow was shot. In less than a second, Lei Xingfeng had killed 2 people. Ku Dashin was stunned. It was too fast. The 3 of them didn't even have time to react. This was Lei Xingfeng's first time killing someone. What was strange was that Lei Xingfeng didn't feel disgusted at all. It was like stepping on an ant. he felt strange too. In fact, after training in Lunley, he had started to change. His personality had become tougher. Ku Dashin was shocked again. He never thought that Lei Xingfeng would be so decisive. He killed 2 people with 2 arrows. It was really clean. He didn't seem like a novice hunter at all. Suddenly, a few arrows were shot. Ku Shi raised his shield and blocked 2 arrows. Lei Xingfeng swung his black bow and deflected an arrow. Then the bowstring made a chi-chi sound and 3 arrows were shot. After shooting the 3 arrows, Lei Xingfeng threw away his black bow. He reached for the dagger beside his leg and rushed into the forest. Ku Dashin shouted, "Charge!" The 3 of them followed Lei Xingfeng into the forest. As Lei Xingfeng trained in Lunley, he could clearly feel that there were 7 or 8 people in the forest. He didn't want to be passive, so he attacked directly. In less than 2 breaths, Lei Xingfeng's first enemy appeared in front of him. That person was hiding behind a big tree. When Lei Xingfeng rushed out, he was shocked. That person shouted and waved the long knife in his hand. That person's face was completely distorted. He stared at Lei Xingfeng ferociously, trying to kill him. After all, it was Lei Xingfeng's first time fighting a real person. In his previous life, he wasn't a fierce person. So when that person slashed at him, he was shocked to the extreme. He completely activated his Lunley and blocked with his dagger. Clang! With a crackle of electricity, the man suddenly froze. The dagger swept past that person's throat. Lei Xingfeng had already rushed over. That person didn't understand why he couldn't move. Ku Dashin fiercely threw out a steel spear. Whoosh! With a scream, a person fell from the tree branch. He was still holding a long bow in his hand. The hunters of lead eagles suddenly collapsed. The 4 of them quickly attacked and defeated the opponent. Although the opponent was a hunting team of more than 10 people, they couldn't be compared to the 4 of them. Ku Shi's shield blocked the arrow that was shot towards Ku Nanshan. Ku Dashin threw out another steel spear. It was a short spear that was more than a meter long. In a short distance, it was definitely a deadly weapon. It killed another person. The people of lead eagles began to flee. The opponent was too strong. Their killing ability was too strong. They couldn't resist at all. In order to save their lives, they could only escape. In the dense forest, if a hunter wanted to escape, it would be very difficult to track them. Ku Dashin ordered, "Don't chase. They have already retreated." Ku Shi said, "There's still one alive here." In less than a minute, the battle was extremely cruel. In just the first contact, the hunters of lead eagles had already lost 6 or 7 people. This hunting team could be considered to be completely destroyed. Ku Shi dragged a hunter of lead eagles to an open space under a tree. He stepped on his back and said coldly, "Why did you come to our territory?" This was the territory of Tiger Cliff Castle. Because it was close to Tiger Cliff Castle, the hunters of lead eagles would never come here. That person was shot in the thigh by Lei Xingfeng. It was a blind arrow shot by Lei Xingfeng based on his intuition. In the end, he was nailed to a tree and was caught by Ku Shi. Ku Dashin frowned and said, "That's strange. Why would people of lead eagles come here?" That person tried to turn his head and struggled. Ku Shi stomped on him hard, making him groan. Lei Xingfeng said, "Uncle Ku, we killed so many people of lead eagles. Will we be okay?" He didn't feel anything when he was killing, but after he was done, he felt a little uneasy. He always knew that hunters of lead eagles and Tiger Cliff Castle killed each other. Every year, there would be hunters of lead eagles who died at the hands of Tiger Cliff Castle. The hatred between the 2 sides had been going on for hundreds of years. There were a total of 3 residential areas: Tiger Cliff Castle, Lead Eagles, and 100 Village. Lead Eagles was north of Tiger Cliff Castle, and Hundred Village was south of Tiger Cliff Castle. They were about 100 kilometers apart. Tiger Cliff Castle and Lead Eagles were enemies, but Hundred Village was a neutral place. Moreover, Hundred Village was very strong and could suppress Tiger Cliff Castle and Lead Eagles. Hundred Village was the main force in dealing with the barbarians. Every time the barbarians invaded, Hundred Village was responsible for stopping them. Kudashin said, "Aphone, don't worry. If we are not prepared, they will kill us without hesitation. Kushur, flip him over." Kushur kicked that person over, and the tri-edged steel in his hand pressed against the person's chin. He said, "Don't play dead. Speak. Why did you come here?" That person's face was ferocious. He said, "You will all die. You people of Tiger Cliff Castle will all die. Ha ha, ha ha." Kunanshan said, "This guy is crazy." Lei Xingfeng said thoughtfully, "Will all die?" There's a hidden meaning in his words. Kudashin nodded and stomped down, breaking that person's arm. He said in a low voice, "What is your Lead Eagles scheming?" That person raised his head, and the tri-edged steel in his chin pierced him. He died in an instant. Kushur shook his head and said, "This is a tough guy." Kudashin smiled bitterly. "We can only go back. Aphone, we can't take most of the meat with us. We can only leave it in the treehouse. We can't stay here." Chapter 12. Lei Xingfeng could only agree as it was too dangerous to stay. He said, "Bring as much as you can." The four of them went back up the tree and quickly brought the bull hide and a portion of the cured meat down the tree. Each of them carried a basket and headed towards Tiger Cliff Castle. In the afternoon, the four of them arrived at Tiger Cliff Castle. Kudashin blew the whistle, and the sharp sound spread far and wide. Soon, a hanging basket was lowered from the top of the cliff. Kudashin placed the basket into the hanging basket and said, "Aphone, you go up first. You can't bring everything in one trip. We'll split it into 2 trips." After 10 minutes, the four of them and the 4 big baskets were lifted to the top of the cliff. Kudashin knew that Lei Xingfeng's family was in trouble, so he gave all the meat to him, along with a bull hide and horn. The other bull hide and horn were divided among the 3 of them. After delivering the items to Lei Xingfeng's house, the 3 of them left. They needed to find the chief of Tiger Cliff Castle to report that Lead Eagles had entered their hunting grounds. Lei Xingfeng carried the 2 baskets of meat and the big bundle of bull hide to the wooden house. The old man sat on the wooden stump and looked up at him and said, "You killed someone?" Ayi, how did you know?" Lei Xingfeng could not understand. The old man could not help but laugh and said, "Of course I know. Very good. Practicing Lei Lunli, the earlier you kill the better." Lei Xingfeng did not understand and asked, "Why?" Practicing Lei Lunli meant killing people. This made Lei Xingfeng very confused. The old man said, "Lei Lunli is violent. Killing people is a way to vent. People who practice Lei Lunli will have a lot of enemies. Of course, you can use other ways to vent your emotions. As long as you can resolve the disadvantages of practicing Lei Lunli, you can use any method. This is also one of the disadvantages of practicing Lei Lunli." Lei Xingfeng had only practiced 40 Lei Lunli, so Lei Lunli did not have much effect on him. Once he practiced 100 Lunli, its effect would gradually become apparent. The old man said, "Killing people before 100 Lunli, haha, it is very beneficial for your control of Lei Lunli." Xianfeng couldn't understand it all, but he wasn't against it. Otherwise he wouldn't have killed so decisively in the wild. This was also due to the influence of Tiger Cliff Castle's men. He had seen too many hunters die at the hands of Lead Eagle's men. The son of Ant Ching, who gave barbarian bull hard skin, died at the hands of Lead Eagle's men, so he didn't feel any guilt in killing them. Even if he couldn't understand, Xian Feng could only accept it. In this world, one couldn't use the moral standards of his previous world to measure. He said, "Ayi, this time I hunted 2 bulls. Unfortunately, I met the hunters of eagle lead eagles. Most of the meat was left in the tree house. I don't know if I can get it back. I brought back a complete bull's skin and horns. There was also a lot of meat. Uncle Ke took good care of it and gave me most of it." The old man did not care and said, "As long as it is enough to eat. Your task now is not to hunt, but to practice. Once you reach 100 lunli, even if it is winter, you can still go out to hunt." Lei Xingfeng was shocked. Hunting in winter? That will freeze people to death. The old man said, "You are not a normal person anymore. Once you practice Lei Lunli, you will be stronger than normal people. You can't use the old way to measure yourself." Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, I am not used to it yet." The old man laughed and said, "Slowly you will get used to it. Hurry up and practice." Lei Xingfeng came back carrying a small basket filled with many wild vegetables. Every year she would go to pick many wild vegetables. Other than eating them, she would also dry them and wait for winter to eat. She saw a few large baskets and knew that her brother had returned. She excitedly rushed into the room and dove into Lei Xingfeng's embrace. She had not seen him for only 2 days, but she was already not used to it. She said, "Brother." Lei Xingfeng smiled and hugged her, saying, "I went to pick wild vegetables again. I don't need too much this year. I will bring back a lot of meat." Lei Xingyao said, "I like to eat wild vegetables." She came out of Lei Xingfeng's embrace and said, "I will go organize them. Today, I picked a lot of red fruits. I will hang them outside to dry." Red fruits were a kind of fruit similar to hawthorn. After drying, they could be stored for a long time. This kind of fruit and meat could be cooked together to make the meat very fresh and tender. It was a kind of seasoning. In this season, almost all women and children would go to pick them. The little girl was very diligent. She hung strings of red fruits on a rope to dry. After organizing them, she went to organize the bull meat that Lei Xingfeng brought back. They were all hung under the eaves to dry. This was the staple food of the winter. Looking at the little girl who was busy like a bee, Lei Xingfeng could not help but sigh. A 6-year-old little girl had already started to take care of the whole family. Fortunately, the people in this world had very good physiques and great strength. Even if the little girl was only 6 years old, she could carry 50 to 60 pounds of things as if they were playing. It was not strenuous at all. Less than an hour after reaching home, Ku Dashan and the other 2 came to the door. Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, "Uncle Ku, what's the matter?" Ku Dashan could not help but smile and said, "You really are resting at home? Let's go back together. There is so much meat in the tree house. If we don't bring it back, it will be a pity." Lei Xingfeng said, "Didn't you say that the people from Lead Eagles invaded?" Ku Nanshan said, "Even if they did invade, we still have to prepare food for the winter. Otherwise, what should we do?" The old man said, "A foam, go. Yao Yao and I are at home. Don't worry." He also knew that once the winter came, food would be a big problem. In the past, he relied on the 2 children to find food. He did not want to starve the children, but he needed to recuperate from his injury. He absolutely could not go out hunting. Once his injury worsened, it would be over. How could he be at ease leaving the 2 children behind? Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay." The 4 of them each carried an empty basket and walked out together. He gave Yao Yao a few instructions. Although the little girl was reluctant, she knew that her brother was doing it for the winter food. She waved her hand obediently. Ku Dashan sighed and said, "My daughter is not as obedient as Yao Yao." She only knows how to eat all day. She is so lazy. Ku Nanshan said, because she has a diligent father like you. Your daughter is living a good life. Lei Xingfeng did not want to say more. In the past, he did not have the ability. Now, as long as he was diligent, he believed that he had the ability to feed Ah Yi. The four of them rushed all the way to the tree house. It was already dark. They almost ran all the way here. They knew that if they were still on the road when it was dark, it would be too dangerous. A few of the traps that Kunanshan had set up in the tree were broken. A few wild beasts that tried to get meat from the tree house suffered a great loss. Therefore, there was no loss of the bull meat in the tree house. Fortunately, they came back quickly. If it had been a night, there probably would not be much left. Ku Dashan said, Nanshan, Kashur, go and rearrange the traps. Afong, you stay on guard. He had already discovered that Lei Xingfeng had sharp ears and eyes. He was a good scout. Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, I will go up. Ku Dashan said, if you find anything, whistle. Chapter 13. Lei Xingfeng quickly climbed up to the tree branch where he practiced last night. He sat down and began to practice. He knew that there shouldn't be any danger at this time, so he should seize the time to practice and reach 100 chakras as soon as possible. The old man had said that once he had 100 chakras, he would be able to hunt during the winter. This was very important to him. The night passed uneventfully. The next morning, while Ku Dashan and the others were cleaning up the remaining bull's beef, another hunting team came. They were also from Tiger Cliff Castle and had a total of 7 people. Under Ku Dashan's guidance, they came to the tree house. Immediately, the small tree house was filled with people. They didn't have much prey. Compared to Ku Dashan's team, this hunting team's luck and strength were much worse. They only hunted some small animals like wild chickens and rabbits. In the eyes of the people of this world, pheasants and hares were not considered as staple food. An ordinary person could easily eat 3 or 4 pheasants in a meal. It was completely different from eating bull meat. Therefore, only hunters who could hunt large animals could be considered qualified. Looking at the bull's beef hanging all over the treehouse, the 7-people hunting team were all envious. The leader, Hudaniu, said, Oh my God, you actually hunted a bull. Dashan, what are you doing? Ku Dashan laughed and said, Old Hu, it's not just 1, it's 2 bulls. The 7 of them looked at Ku Dashan in a different light. What a joke. If they could hunt some bulls, they wouldn't need too many. A few bulls would be enough for them to safely survive the winter. As long as they could hunt some small animals, they would be able to survive. What could be more important than safely surviving the winter? For the hunters of this world, to have enough food was a blessing. Although Hudaniu was suspicious, he had seen so much bull's beef with his own eyes. It didn't seem fake. He laughed and said, Ha, Dashan, you guys hunted it yourself? This thing, it's not something that a few people can kill. Oh, right. Why aren't the horns and skin here? Kunanshan said, We already sent it back. As he spoke, he was secretly glad that they had returned. Otherwise, the remaining beef would have been taken advantage of by these guys. Hu Xiaohu was Hudania's cousin. In Hudania's team, he was the strongest hunter. He was on par with Kunanshan. He asked, How did you kill the 2 bulls? He still didn't believe it in his heart. He couldn't help but be jealous. It was already the end of the hunting season. If they couldn't collect enough meat, they would have to starve during the winter. No one wanted to starve. Hudania's mouth twitched, but in the end, he didn't stop him. This kind of question was rather rude. It involved the secret methods of a hunter, but he also wanted to know. Ku Dashan said, This Xiaohu, this depends on each person's means. In Daniel's team, there was a middle-aged bearded man with white hair. He was called Whitehead, who by hunters. He was the last one to climb up and noticed that the atmosphere was a bit off. Seeing Exine Fong, he could not help but laugh. Fong, you also came out to hunt. Hee, time really flies. Lei Xingfeng hurried forward. Uncle Whitehead, are you in this team? He didn't know that Whitehead, who was in this hunting team, Whitehead, who had helped him before. When he was in trouble, he gave him some food. Whitehead, who said, last time, didn't I say, if you want to join the hunting team, come find me. So you joined Dashin's team. Lei Xingfeng said, Uncle Whitehead, I don't want to make things difficult for you. He knew that Whitehead, who was just an ordinary member in the team, he didn't have the final say in bringing people to join. He had to get the consent of the majority of the team, which was difficult for Whitehead, who there were more than 1,000 people in Tiger Cliff Castle. Although most of them looked familiar, Lei Xingfeng only knew a few hundred people, and he didn't know the composition of each hunting team. Hu Daniu and Hu Xiaohu didn't know Lei Xingfeng. Of course, they would find him familiar when they met. Lei Xingfeng had always been grateful to those who helped him. He pulled Whitehead Hu to the side and whispered, Uncle Whitehead, how long have you been out? Whitehead Hu sighed and whispered, it hasn't been a smooth journey. We didn't dare to touch the strong ones, and there weren't many small animals. We have been out for 3 days, and this is all we got. If we can't hunt bigger animals, this hunting trip will be a failure. Lei Xingfeng hesitated. Of course, he understood the meaning behind Whitehead Hu's words. He wasn't really 16 years old, and his thoughts were much more complicated than these hunters. After all, the people here had little contact with the outside world. They also kept a very simple culture, and there were very few people who tried to cheat each other. Uncle Whitehead, I was the one who killed those 2 bulls. What? You killed them? Whitehead, who cried out. Suddenly, everyone's eyes were fixed on him. Hu Daniu pointed at Lei Xingfeng, but his eyes were fixed on Whitehead Hu. He said, You mean him? Dashin sighed in his heart. Of course, he knew why Lei Xingfeng said that. He also knew that Whitehead Hu was like him, and often helped Lei Xingfeng's family. He said, Yes, it was a Feng who killed them. Hu Daniu, Hu Xiaohu, Hu Yi, the 3 Hu brothers Ku Dao, Ku Zizhong, and Whitehead Hu, none of the 7 hunters dared to believe it. However, Ku Dashin, Ku Nanshan, and Ku Shi's expressions knew that they weren't lying. They couldn't lie. Ku Dao smiled and said, A Feng is so powerful. How did you hunt the bulls? Lei Xingfeng despised Ku Dao a little. Was he trying to coax children? However, he wasn't angry. He said, I killed them with a bow and arrow. Suddenly, Hu Daniu and the others were stunned. Who didn't know how tough a bull's hide was? Hu Daniu said, How is that possible? What kind of bow did you use to kill a bull? Lei Xingfeng didn't explain. He reached out and took the black bow from his back. He handed it over and said, This is the bow. Hu Daniu took the black bow. He only felt that it was heavy in his hand. He said in surprise, What a heavy bow. The hunters present were all good archers. Using a bow and arrow was their specialty. Although they couldn't shoot with great precision, it was their instinct to draw the bow and shoot. This black bow didn't look like much, but once it was in the hands of an experienced hunter, they would be able to feel the difference. Not only was it heavy, but there was also a heavy smell to it. That was the feeling of a good bow. Hu Daniu held the black bow. He put one hand on the bowstring and pulled the bow. Hu knew that he could only pull it a little. He couldn't pull the bow open. He shouted and stomped his feet. He used all his strength to pull the bow. Suddenly, his face turned red. He said awkwardly, What a strong bow. I can't pull it open. Hu Xiaohu said, Brother, let me try. He was a famous strong man in Tiger Cliff Castle. He could lift 1,000-pound stone. Hu Daniu handed the bow to Hu Xiaohu. He was surprised. He never knew that there was such a hard bow. He couldn't even pull it open. He said, "Okay, you try." Ku Dashan and the others laughed. The three of them tried the black bow. No one could pull it open. The bow was too hard. Hu Xiaohu grabbed the handle of the black bow. He took a deep breath. He held the bow with one hand and the other on the bowstring. He shouted, "Open!" Chapter 14. His muscles bulged as he pulled the bow in a horse stance. With a ripping sound, the linen cloth on his back was torn apart. However, he only managed to pull the bow a little, at most 1/5 of the way. His wrist went soft, and the bowstring was reset. His face was red, and he shouted again. This time, it was even worse than last time. He was so embarrassed that he said, I can't pull it. It's too hard." Hu Daniu said, "A phone, pull the bow once and show Uncle." Lei Xingfeng found it funny. He nodded and said, "Okay." Without saying much, he raised his hand and grabbed the black bow. Very casually, he knocked the bowstring. With a little bit of force, the bow was instantly drawn. Because there were no arrows, he pulled the bowstring and gently set it back. There was no sound at all. Hu Daniu and the others were dumbfounded. How much strength was needed to draw the bow? It was too scary. They now believed what he said, that he was the one who killed the bulls. Hunters were also a group of people who worshipped the strong, regardless of age. If you were capable, others would admire you. Hu Daniu complained, "Whitehead, this is your fault. You should invite a phone to our team." Ku Dashan was not happy and said, "If a phone came, would you accept him? Now that you have seen a Feng's ability, you regret it." Hu Daniu was weaker than Ku Dashan and the others, so of course he would not quarrel. He smiled bitterly and said, "What a pity, what a pity." A thought flashed through Xian Feng's mind as he spoke. "There's nothing to be regretful about. We can still hunt bulls here. Coincidentally, Uncle Daniu's men are here. There's enough manpower. We can still bring the bulls back." Ku Dashan nodded and said, "That works too. But our hunting team wants the lion's share. Daniu, what do you think?" Hu Daniu was overjoyed, and so were the others in their hunting team. This was a big advantage. Hu Daniu said, Okay, we only want 2 tents. The rest is yours." Lei Xingfeng said, "You have a lot of people. 2 tents is too little. Let's make it 4 tents. I will try my best to kill as many bulls as possible." Now, he hoped to store enough meat so that he could start cultivating with all his might. He didn't want to waste any more time. 40%, which was almost half. Ku Dashan and the others did not have any objections. After all, the other party had 7 people, while they only had 4. With them helping to transport the barbarian bull, there was no need to throw away the internal organs and bones of the barbarian bull. Those things were also good stuff. There was a large iron basin in the treehouse with charcoal piled inside. Ku Dashan gestured for everyone to sit down and start the fire to roast the meat. Since there was already a large piece of bull meat, it was very convenient to roast it. Until the afternoon, the herd of bulls would come to the pond to drink on time. A group of hunters excitedly waited for the herd of bulls to pass by under the tree. Who would have thought that they would be so unlucky today? Not a single herd of bulls passed by this path. Hu Daniu said disappointedly, F***K, we should go over there. These bastards actually don't go here. Lei Xingfeng said, "I'll go over." Ku Dashan grabbed him and said, "If we can't wait today, we'll wait until tomorrow. A phone, don't take the risk." Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Don't worry, I have confidence." He quickly came down from the ancient tree. Kusher carried his shield and followed him. He said faintly, "You need someone to be on guard." Actually, he didn't know that after Lei Xingfeng obtained Lei Lunli, he could control the movements within a 100-meter radius. It was very difficult for wild beasts to sneak up on him. However, Lei Xingfeng didn't refuse. The two of them quickly disappeared into the bushes. Lei Xingfeng observed and found that there were a total of 5 herds of bulls. The largest herd had a few hundred bulls, and the smaller herds had a few dozen bulls. He was targeting the smaller herds of bulls. Soon, Lei Xingfeng and Kusher came to a high protruding rock. This rock was about 7 to 8 meters above the ground. It was just in the path of the bulls. The bulls couldn't climb up a 7 to 8 meter high rock. Lei Xingfeng said, "The terrain here is very good." Kusher nodded and said, "I'll protect you from behind. You hunt." Xianfeng nodded, carefully observing the direction of the herd of barbarian bulls. He laughed. "Barbarian beef. It's my favorite. The first time I ate it, I was pleasantly surprised. It's much better than any wild chicken or duck." Kusher said, "Bull meat can increase a person's strength. If you eat it from a young age, not only will you have more strength when you grow up, your body will also become very strong. It's just that bulls are too difficult to hunt." After waiting for about 10 minutes, the bulls slowly walked over. Lei Xingfeng inserted the special arrows into the ground one by one. This time, he inserted 4 arrows. He was prepared to shoot 2 to 3 bulls. If there were more, it would be difficult to deal with them. Standing on top of the rock, they could clearly see the backs of the bulls. The distance here was closer than on the tree. Lei Xingfeng aimed at an extremely strong adult bull. Bang! The bowstring vibrated. This arrow was almost completely buried in the bull's back. Only half of the arrow's length was exposed. The bull silently knelt down. It didn't even have the chance to cry out. This arrow was too ruthless. It directly shot from the back to the heart, instantly killing it. However, the vibrating sound of the bowstring startled the bulls. The bulls in front began to run. Lei Xingfeng quickly pulled out the arrows from the ground and instantly shot another arrow. The 2 arrows killed 2 bulls. The other bulls had already realized that something was wrong. However, they couldn't find the enemy and could only run forward. In a few breaths, the bulls had already run far away. Lei Xingfeng shook his head and said, "Forget it. It's not bad to have 2 bulls. Send the signal and let them come over." Kusher nodded. He took out his whistle and let out a long whistle. In a few minutes, Kudashin and Hudaniu both came over. Hu Xiaohu looked at the bulls kneeling on the ground and said in shock, "What a powerful arrow. It actually shot into the bull's back. Afeng, you are amazing." With this kind of archery ability, he could definitely enjoy a first-class life in Tiger Cliff Castle. Of course, the first-class life that hunters wanted was to not have to worry about food and clothing. To Lei Xingfeng, this was not his goal. There was strength in numbers. Everyone tied the bull's legs with ropes and dragged them all the way to the treehouse. Kudashin said, "The wounds on these 2 bulls are very small. Let's block the wounds and not let the blood flow out. We'll just drag the bulls back. It's not worth it to dissect them here." Hudaniu also agreed. He had 2 huge bulls. If he gave them 4 tenths, it would be equivalent to a complete bull. He was very excited. They packed the remaining cured meat in the treehouse and made 2 large wooden boards. They tied the bulls to the boards, and 5 people dragged 1 bull. The 2 hunting teams happily returned. The big harvest this time was very meaningful to Hudania's hunting team. As long as they followed Kudashin's hunting team closely, they would be able to get a steady stream of prey. When the 2 hunting teams returned to Tiger Cliff Castle, it caused a huge commotion. To be able to hunt 2 bulls and come out unscathed was already a miracle in Tiger Cliff Castle. A bull could provide a lot of meat, bones, and organs were also treasures. not to mention the bull's hide and horns, which were full of treasures. Whether it was Coot, Dashin, or Houdaniu, both decided to take advantage of this opportunity to bring their hunting teams to hunt a few more bulls. It would be best if each family could get one bull. With this kind of harvest, any family would be able to get through the winter. This was because the bull's hide and horns could be exchanged for a large amount of food. Not to mention, a bull's meat alone could reach a few thousand pounds, not to mention the organs and bones, which could also be eaten. Chapter 15. At this time, the chief of Tiger Cliff Castle came to visit. The chief of Tiger Cliff Castle was not the local tyrant. There were many things that needed to be discussed with everyone. Once there was a conflict with the outside world, the chief was the representative. Normally, he did not have any special privileges. The only benefit was that every hunting team would give the chief a portion of the game. The chief could enjoy a portion of the game, while the rest had to be given to the poor in Tiger Cliff Castle. The chief changed every few years and was always an old hunter from the Hu family or the Ku family. Usually, an old man with prestige in Tiger Cliff Castle could become the chief. The current chief was an old hunter from the Hu family named Hu Tsanyu. He was a famous hunter in Tiger Cliff Castle and was almost 50 years old this year. The time here was different from Lei Xingfeng's previous life. A day had about 30 hours. This was his own estimate. A year was not 365 days, but 300 days during the summer season and 200 days during the winter season. Therefore, a year here was more than a year and a half in his previous life. 50 years old. According to his previous life's calculations, he was almost 80 years old. However, the people here were in good health. They were still full of energy even at 50 years old, but they would not be able to hunt anymore. The old people's reactions were much slower and could not deal with many unexpected situations. Therefore, Hu Tsangyu became the chief of Tiger Cliff Castle. This time, when he heard that Ku Dashin and Hu Daniu's hunting team had hunted 2 bulls, he could not sit still and rushed to Lei Xingfeng's house the moment he heard the news. Hu Tsangyu brought a few people to Lei Xingfeng's house. As the chief, he had once cared about this family. Although the Lei family was an outsider, because of the small population here, any family that settled here was a precious resource. Therefore, when the Lei family was at its most difficult, he had helped them. Everyone welcomed Hu Tsangyu and the others into the yard. The whole yard was filled with the smell of blood. On a large wooden frame, 2 skinned bulls were hung with their innards removed. One of the bulls was almost completely decomposed. On the ground, there was a large piece of meat. Everyone in the yard was in high spirits. Ku Dashin and Hu Daniu were in charge of distributing the meat. Of course, Lei Xingfeng got the biggest share. After all, he was the one who killed the bull. Soon, Tsangyu found out about Lei Xingfeng's contribution. He was very enthusiastic. A hunter who can kill a bull is the best hunter anywhere. He said, "A Feng, Tiger Cliff Castle's harvest this year is not very high. Hee, can you help everyone?" Lei Bao was immediately unhappy. He used to have a bad temper, but now he was very good. He said, "Patriarch, my grandson is only 16 years old. It's his first hunt. How do you want him to help?" Tsangyu chuckled. "Brother Lei, your grandson is amazing. It's his first time hunting, and he managed to hunt a bull. This is the first time in Tiger Cliff Castle. Ha, brother, you know that this year's hunting team didn't have a good harvest. It's almost winter. I originally planned to gather all the hunting teams for a large-scale group hunt, but I didn't expect Feng to be so capable." Thunderstorm was a little unhappy. He knew what Tsangyu meant. He said, "You want a Feng to be the main hunter?" Tsangyu laughed. "Brother, if a Feng is the main hunter, he doesn't have to worry about anything else. Moreover, he can get a share. All the hunters present were happy. Bulls were hard to kill. It wasn't because they were strong, but because it was difficult for a hunter's weapon to break through a bull's defense. Even if they used a trap to trap a bull, it would be difficult to kill it. The most important thing was the bull's meat. It was very nutritious. A hunter would need to eat 5 to 6 pounds of other meat to be full. Bull's meat was very good for the body. Plus, the bull's hide could be used to make armor, and its horns could be used to make bows. It could be said that every part of a bull was a treasure. In the eyes of a hunter, it was the best prey. There were more than 300 young men in Tiger Cliff Castle who could go hunting. There were dozens of teams, with the largest team having 15 people. The smallest team was Ku Dashin's team of 3. Of course, after Lei Xingfeng joined, the team had 4 people. In Tiger Cliff Castle, anyone who dared to form a team of 3 was an expert hunter. Thunderstorm sighed in his heart and said, "Well, a Feng has always been helped by everyone. This is a return." Songyu's face was slightly red. He felt like he was being forced to return the favor. Lei Xingfeng said, "It's okay, Yi. I'm willing to be the main hunter." He didn't feel conflicted. In his previous life, he had seen a lot of deception. He had always been grateful for the simplicity of the people here. Many things would surprise and make him grateful. Now that he had the ability, of course he would return the favor. Songyu said happily, "Okay, a Feng, you rest for a day. I'll go gather the hunters." Unfortunately, there are still many hunting teams outside. This time, we might be able to gather 100 people. We'll leave tomorrow. Large-scale hunting was very complicated, especially when it came to hunting only one type of prey. It wasn't a group hunt, but a specialized hunt. They had to rely on a few or even a dozen of the strongest hunters to hunt large animals. The others weren't there to hunt, but to transport the prey. Tiger Cliff Castle had never had a main hunter like this. Who would have thought that the first main hunter would be a 16-year-old boy? Once a main hunter showed his ability and gained the recognition of the other hunters, then he would receive the greatest respect in the local area. If they were in the wild, they would have the right to command any hunting team. Of course, the hunting team had to come from the same place. For example, if Lei Xingfeng became the main hunter, then all the hunting teams in Tiger Cliff Castle would listen to his command. All the hunters in Tiger Cliff Castle were gathered. Head Songyu announced that Lei Xingfeng would be the first main hunter of Tiger Cliff Castle. The hunters weren't too surprised because they had already received the news that Tiger Cliff Castle had a youth who could quickly kill bulls. Most of the hunters had encountered bulls before and knew how difficult they were to deal with. So the process went smoothly and no one objected. However, many of them still had some doubts in their hearts. They wanted to see if this youth was really that strong in the wild. Soon, the preparations were completed. Not only were there hunters participating in this hunt, but there were also many middle-aged women. They didn't need to hunt, but were responsible for handling the prey or helping to carry it. The women here were also very strong. Although they couldn't compare to men, compared to the women in Lei Xingfeng's previous life, their strength was on the level of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. If their shoulders weren't a few 100 pounds strong, they would be embarrassed to meet others. Early in the morning, the sky was covered with dark clouds. Everyone gathered and set off from Tiger Cliff Castle on time. They majestically left Tiger Cliff Castle. Head Songyu also followed. He didn't need to hunt, but was responsible for command and coordination. With him around, there wouldn't be any conflicts. The captains of each hunting team distributed their work. Some were outpost, some were defense, and some were rear guard. Lei Xingfeng coldly observed from the side. He found that Songyu's organizational skills were quite strong. More than 100 hunters, more than 60 women, and nearly 200 people didn't seem to be in a mess. They continued to move forward. This time, they still went to the pond. That was where the bulls had to go because it was the most convenient place to hunt. Chapter 16. Lei Xingfeng walked in the middle of the group. In front of him were 2 hunting teams with 10 people responsible for driving away the wild beasts. The pond was originally the closest hunting ground of Tiger Cliff Castle, but only strong hunting teams would come here. Although there was a lot of game here, it was also very dangerous. Even if they killed small animals, it was not easy to find them. If they were not careful, they would attract the attention of wild beasts. Suddenly, the team in front of them let out a sharp whistle. Sangyu was surprised. "Quick, help! It's lead eagles attacking us." 10 hunters rushed out of the group. They were all famous hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle. Lei Xingfeng also rushed out with his black bow. Ku Dashin cursed. He obviously knew that this was lead eagles coming for revenge. He called out and rushed out with Kunan Shan and Ku Shi. Sangyu shouted, "Everyone else, stay alert. Don't all go. Stay on guard." He also had 60 women with him. They were the main force of Tiger Cliff Castle. If there were any casualties, then it would be a big problem. In the mountains, women had a high status because they were one of the pillars of the family. Nothing could happen to them. This time, Sangyu had taken a big risk by bringing so many women with him. Most of the hunters surrounded the women. What a joke! Many of the women here were the wives and sisters of these hunters. If they were surrounded and killed, how could they bear it? Lei Xingfeng's perception was much higher than the hunters. He could clearly feel the enemies in front of him. There were about 20 people, and there were about 10 more behind. He didn't know the exact number, but he felt that his estimation was not far from the truth. After a few screams, the hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle shouted, "Everyone be careful! They have sharpshooters." Sharpshooters were a special existence among the hunters. These kinds of sharpshooters were not very good at hunting. They were more used against humans or barbarians because of the wild beasts in this world. Of course, Lei Xingfeng's black bow did not count. His strength exceeded that of a normal person's bow. When they heard that there were sharpshooters, all the hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle hid behind trees or rocks. None of them dared to move forward. 2 people had already been shot, and no one knew if they were dead or alive. They were all experienced hunters, and no one wanted to be a target. Ku Dashin hid behind a big tree. He also had his bow ready, but he couldn't pinpoint the enemy's position. The forest was dense, so vision was limited. Hunters were all experienced hunters, so they wouldn't leave any openings. At first, the hunters from Tiger Cliff Castle were at a disadvantage, but they were caught off guard. The others were able to dodge in time. For a while, the 2 sides were in a stalemate. Both sides shot arrows back and forth, and no one dared to move forward. The hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle were worried about the woman behind them, and the hunters of lead eagles realized that the number of enemies was far greater than they expected. Death was at stake, especially when the enemy had sharpshooters. Ku Dashin turned around and looked back. He knew that someone had to break the deadlock. Ku Shi was on his left, and Kunan Shan was on his right. The 3 of them were used to working together. Even in a sudden attack like this, the 3 of them could still stay together. Lei Xingfeng, on the other hand, did not have this kind of teamwork. After all, he had just joined the hunting team and had many habits to develop. Kunan Shan asked, "Where is a phone?" Ku Shi said, "I saw him rush out, but I don't know where he went." The 3 of them saw Lei Xingfeng rush out, so they followed him. But in a flash, Lei Xingfeng disappeared. His speed was too fast. Xianfeng had already reached the front. He hid behind a large boulder. Beside it was a lush shrub. In front of him were a dozen large trees, and because of the large boulder, his field of vision was relatively wide. Relying on Lei Lunli and his new senses, Xianfeng noticed that there were 4 lead eagle's archers on the trees and a dozen people under the trees, all of them hiding behind the trees or behind the shrubs. This was an ambush that had been prepared for a long time. Lei Xingfeng began to observe carefully and memorized the people he found one by one. The hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle were also hiding in a battle line. Anyone who dared to enter the middle of the confrontation would definitely be attacked. No one dared to move. After careful analysis, Lei Xingfeng was confident. He moved stealthily and quickly reached Ku Dashin's side. With his senses, it was easy to find Ku Dashin. He whispered, "Uncle Kudashin, I need help." Ku Dashin said, "What do you want us to do? Tell me, I'll listen to you." After seeing Lei Xingfeng's powerful archery, he had great confidence in this 16-year-old boy. Ku Nanshan also smiled. "If there's anything you need, just tell me. I'll listen to you too." Ku Shi did not say anything. He only nodded at Lei Xingfeng, indicating that he would listen to the order. Unknowingly, Lei Xingfeng had become the leader. Lei Xingfeng could not help but feel a sense of pride. This was the benefit of being strong. He said, "I need you guys to attract the enemy's attention. Yup, it's best to mobilize everyone. Don't rush out, just make some noise." Ku Dashin said, "No problem. Nanshan, you notify the people on the left. I'll notify the people on the right. Ku Shi, you follow Feng and help him defend." Among the 3, only Ku Shi had a shield, which was the best for defense. Ku Shi said, "Leave it to me." He did not say much. Once he gave the order, he would do his best. Very quickly, the hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle made some noise. Suddenly, the hunters of lead eagles could not help but attack. Chapter 17. Feng, be careful, I'm in front. Ku Shi shouted. He appeared in front of Lei Xingfeng with a shield in one hand and a tri-edged steel spear in the other. Lei Xingfeng sneered, "Don't worry, watch me." He had unlimited confidence in his black bow. He nocked an arrow and aimed at the shield-wielding lead eagle hunter in front of him. Bang! Every time Lei Xingfeng heard the sound of metal colliding, he had a strange feeling. It was not the sound of a bowstring, but more like the sound of a pistol in his previous life. Ku Shi was shocked to see the hunter running towards him. It was as if he had been punched hard. A small hole appeared on his shield, and an arrow appeared on his head. Most of the arrow had pierced through his head, leaving only the tail of the arrow in his forehead. It was a one-shot kill. Bang! Bang! No matter how the 2 hunters tried to dodge, Lei Xingfeng's arrow was too fast. They could not dodge it and fell to the ground in an instant. Lei Xingfeng did not find it difficult to kill 3 people. With the strength of his black bow, his arrows had an unparalleled penetrative power. With the current equipment of the hunters, there was almost no defense. At this time, the hunters from both sides had begun to fight. Ku Dashin waved his arm, and a short steel spear flew out. The hunter opposite him was not simple. He also had a spear in his hand and raised his hand to deflect the short spear. Ku Dashin's sneak attack failed and exposed his hiding spot. The hunter rushed towards Ku Dashin. Bang! Bang! 2 bowstring sounds were heard. The hunter unhurriedly used his spear to deflect the arrows. With a loud shout, he rushed forward. Ku Nanshan saw that shooting arrows was useless, so he immediately threw away his bow and rushed out with Ku Dashin. 2 against 1, Ku Dashin was surprised to find that the opponent was extremely strong. Even though he was dealing with the 2 of them, he seemed to be able to handle it with ease. His gaze was also constantly scanning the surroundings. In just a dozen or so seconds, Kudashin had already been injured. His arm had been slashed by the sharp spear. Although the wound wasn't heavy, it clearly slowed down Kudashin's movements. Kunanshan was vexed. If Kushur was here, with their many years of hunting tacit understanding, they would definitely be able to hold off this expert. Bang! Hearing the familiar sound of metal clashing against metal, the hunter's expression changed. Without thinking, he raised his spear and swung it slightly. With a ding sound, an arrow fell. Someone said, "Not bad, you can block my arrow." Kudashin, Uncle Nanshan, retreat. When Kudashin and Kunanshan heard the special sound of the bowstring, they knew that Lei Xingfeng had made his move. Both of them were experienced and retreated as soon as they heard the sound. The lead eagle hunter stared not far away with a serious expression. He said calmly, "Come out." Hiding in the dark and shooting arrows is not a good man. Come out and fight with me. Lei Xingfeng knew that his black bow wouldn't be able to hurt the opponent. Moreover, he had no more arrows. He threw the black bow in his hand to Kushur and walked out with his dagger. The hunter looked at Lei Xingfeng with surprise. He didn't expect the person who posed such a great threat to him to be a teenager. This was really unexpected. He said, "I didn't expect Tiger Cliff Castle to have such a godly archer like you. Haha, let's fight. Whoever loses dies." Kudashin said angrily, "Bastard, I'll fight you." The hunter said calmly, "You can't. You'll die as soon as you come." After Lei Xingfeng started practicing Lei Lunli, he was full of confidence. Moreover, after practicing Lei Lunli, he became a little arrogant. He didn't bother to hide his thoughts and said, "Lei Xingfeng, you come out and tell me." The hunter laughed. "Interesting little guy. I'm Da Fei from Lead Eagle. Ha! Too bad you're going to die in my hands. Come, let me see how good the next generation of Tiger Cliff Castle is." Lei Xingfeng looked at the dagger in his hand and then looked at the opponent's 2-meter-long spear. He said, "Die in your hands? The wind is strong. Be careful not to sprain your tongue. Kudashin, give me a short spear." Kudashin shot out 2 short spears and had 2 left. He threw one to Lei Xingfeng and said, "A phone, be careful." Lei Xingfeng laughed. After practicing for so many years, it's time to fight. If he didn't practice Lei Lunli, he would probably be afraid. However, after practicing Lei Lunli, the cowardice in his personality was completely eliminated. This cowardice was brought over from his previous life. In that life, he didn't do anything violent and could be said to be a normal person who followed the rules. Da Fei's face became serious. He said, "Come, let me see if you can withstand my attack with your level." He felt that he would definitely win. The only difference was whether he would be able to kill his opponent quickly or be delayed by his opponent. The result should be the same. The people from Lead Eagle and Tiger Cliff Castle were still fighting. However, Da Fei's position in Lead Eagle seemed to be very high. Therefore, when he spoke, the hunters from Lead Eagle began to withdraw. The hunters from Tiger Cliff Castle were the same. When they saw that Lei Xingfeng wanted to fight, they began to retreat. They planned to help Lei Xingfeng. After all, Lei Xingfeng was the main hunter. If something happened to him, it would be very troublesome. Sang Yu also arrived. He brought a group of hunters with him. Da Fei's heart skipped a beat. He didn't think that Tiger Cliff Castle would bring so many hunters. He felt that he had miscalculated. However, he noticed that there was something wrong with Lei Xingfeng. This was because the hunters from Tiger Cliff Castle had a trace of nervousness on their faces. This indicated that Lei Xingfeng was very important. He said, "Lead Eagle, retreat. Stop fighting." Since he wanted to fight alone, he had to control the scale of the battle. Sanyu also gave the same order. He said, "A phone, what's going on?" He didn't see the previous scene, so he didn't know what was going on. However, the confrontation between Lei Xingfeng and Da Fei gave him a bad feeling. Lei Xingfeng didn't care and said, "He wants to kill me." Sanyu suddenly became anxious. He scolded, "You are all dead. Let a phone fight alone. He is still a child." The other hunters' faces turned red. Some of them wanted to step forward, but Lei Xingfeng said, "Everyone don't move. Grandpa Hu, don't worry. I won't lose." At this moment, he was full of confidence. He didn't believe that his opponent was stronger than him. With Lei Lunli, how could a normal person be his opponent? Da Fei sneered, "Brave child. However, you will die because of your courage. Don't overestimate yourself." Lei Xingfeng was already 10 meters away from Da Fei. This was a relatively flat area. Although there were many weeds and shrubs, there weren't any tall trees. The waist-high weeds couldn't cover a person standing there. Da Fei held his spear with one hand and pointed it at Lei Xingfeng. He said, "Come, kid, let me see how strong you are." The hunters of lead eagles had gloating smiles on their faces. They had already seen Da Fei's prowess. This person had just returned from the outside world a year ago. He had defeated all the experts of lead eagles without a single defeat. He had easily become the most famous hunter of lead eagles. In one breath, he had married 2 of the most beautiful girls of lead eagles. He was an extremely powerful figure in lead eagles. After Lei Xingfeng started practicing Lei Lunli, his personality changed. However, the caution he brought from his previous life didn't change. He knew very well that it didn't matter if he was wild or crazy. However, if he was careless and careless, it was absolutely unacceptable. When facing an enemy, he had to treat them seriously. He walked forward step by step. Chapter 18. With his blood boiling, Lei Xingfeng only had one thought, "Come at me." Suddenly, the hunters on both sides became nervous. Everyone understood that a one-on-one battle was definitely a master hunter. The hunters of lead eagles were very confident in Da Fei, but towards this young hunter from Tiger Cliff Castle, they gradually began to pay more attention. This was because no other hunter from Tiger Cliff Castle had taken the initiative to replace him. This proved that this person was definitely a master hunter. To be a master hunter at such a young age was really rare. The 2 of them were only a few steps away from each other. Both of them faced each other, and neither of them dared to move closer. At this distance, if a fight broke out, it would only take a blink of an eye. Therefore, both of them were extremely focused, staring at each other. Suddenly, Lei Xingfeng's pupils contracted. He discovered Da Fei's secret. That steel spear had a trace of red glow. If he was not close enough, he would not be able to see it. With Lei Xingfeng's current eyesight, he immediately recognized that this was Lunli. Only when Lunli was transferred to a weapon would this phenomenon appear. In an instant, his heart was alarmed, and he immediately began to use his Lei Lunli. Da Fei did not wait any longer. Originally, he had the mentality of a cat playing with a mouse, but this time, he changed. He wanted to kill Lei Xingfeng in one strike to establish his dominance. This was because he noticed that more and more hunters from Tiger Cliff Castle were appearing. Only by killing Lei Xingfeng quickly could he intimidate the opponents. Otherwise, once he was entangled, the others would swarm him, and the hunters he brought along would be finished. Ah, boom. It was a direct hit. Although Lei Xingfeng's combat experience was not rich, but he had been training since he was 6 years old. His combat reflexes were top-notch, and after practicing Lei Lunli, his senses and body instincts, as well as his strength and reflexes, had all been improved. The opponent's attack was fast, but his reflexes were also fast. The steel spear was aimed at his throat. Lei Xingfeng waved his short spear to block. In this direct hit, both of them did not gain any advantage. Da Fei only felt a huge force hit the spearhead. Even if he injected Lun Li into the spear, he could not block this force. The spear was immediately knocked away, and his hand that was holding the spear felt numb. He was extremely surprised. How was this possible? One must know that he had injected a little Lun Li. How could a normal person block Lun Li? How much strength did this require? A few questions flashed through his mind. Although Xian Feng used his short spear to block the incoming spear, he still staggered a bit. This strength also surprised him. This was the first time he met someone who was able to compete with him in terms of strength. Actually, Da Fei's strength was not as strong as his. Of course, a battle was not purely about strength, it was also Xian Feng's lack of battle experience. Or else he would have entered close combat the moment he blocked the spear. The opponent was using a long spear. He would have the advantage by maintaining a certain distance. Both of them had only exchanged one move, but alarms were ringing in their hearts. The opponent's strength was not weak. Da Fei said, "Kid, not bad. No wonder you became a master hunter at such a young age. However, in my eyes, you are still not worth mentioning." Xian Feng laughed loudly. "Ha, then let's do it. Fight." This time, he did not wait for the opponent to attack. Instead, he attacked first. The two of them continued to exchange blows. The steel spear and short spear collided. Gradually, Da Fei and Lei Xingfeng's anger became bigger and bigger. Following the collision of the steel spear and short spear, the hunters present noticed a strange scene. Da Fei's steel spear was emitting circles of red and silver light, and a wave of heat could be felt, while Xian Feng's short spear had traces of silver lightning dancing on it, and even emitted a slight crackling sound. It was the sound of lightning striking. Of course, these hunters did not understand. They only felt that it was strange, but a few experienced hunters knew what it was, and those who knew, their faces all changed. This included Tiger Cliff Castle's chief Sangyu. After all, he was old. He had seen and heard more than the average hunter. He immediately knew that this was a terrifying Luan master. He ordered the hunters to retreat. He had heard many rumors about Luan masters. He knew that this group of people were terrifying. Other than the Luan masters who had just started training, the stronger Luan masters would not attack normal people. However, once they were angered, the consequences were not something normal people could bear. The sky suddenly darkened. Sangyu looked at the sky and could not help but bitterly smile. A storm at this time was not a good thing. The local climate was like this. During the warm season, there were many days of heavy rain. During the cold season, snowstorms were common. Chapter 19. The numbness in Da Fei's arm became stronger and stronger. He finally understood that the opponent's strength was not strong, but the opponent had the rare Lei Lun Li and the potential of a single wheel. He was jealous. He had the potential of 3 wheels, the most obvious being Fire Lun Li and Silver Lun Li. In fact, 3 wheels already made it difficult for him to reach the level of a mill wheel master. Suddenly, he met a young man with a single wheel and a rare Lei Lun Li at that. With this kind of talent, once out of the mountains, he would be a treasure. At this moment, Da Fei had a strong killing intent. Since he had already offended such a genius, he might as well kill the opponent. Danger must be nipped in the bud. Another collision. He jumped back and said, "Wait." Lei Xingfeng was addicted to fighting. This kind of battle made him extremely happy. The opponent's strength was only slightly higher than his, but his Lei Lun Li could definitely suppress the opponent. This kind of battle was extremely beneficial for his growth. How could he bear to not fight? He did not care whether it was slow or fast. His body exploded, and he continued to attack. Fighting and chasing, Da Fei complained in his heart. This young man was like a madman. When fighting, this guy's eyes were shining, and he looked like he was enjoying himself. Encountering this kind of person, Dafe also felt that it was very troublesome. Dafe yelled, "Ingyu, sound the horn." He continued to block. His arm became more and more numb. He continued to retreat. Everyone could see that this guy's momentum was weakening. A whistle sounded. It was long and sharp, and it spread far and wide. For the hunters present, everyone knew how to sound the whistle. The whistle of the hunters here had different signals, but the difference was not big. This whistle was to summon people from afar. Everyone could understand. Songyu's face changed and said, "They are summoning people, we can't wait. A phone, you keep him busy. The others, kill them." This was the wisest way. Now, they could still rely on their numbers. Once the opponent's group came, Tiger Cliff's people would be miserable. One must know that there were women in the group. Lead Eagles had less than 40 people, while Tiger Cliff Castle had more than 200 people. Among them, 60 were women, and 100 were hunters. 10 were left behind to protect them, while the remaining 110 hunters quickly organized themselves. Without hesitation, they pounced on the enemy, completely annihilating them. Dafe suddenly became anxious and shouted, "You dare!" He turned to face the enemy. Lei Xingfeng could not agree. He shouted, "Don't go! Fight!" He rushed forward again. Suddenly, the sound of killing shook the sky. Lead Eagles hunters were not bad, but their numbers were too few. Plus, their marksman was shot by Lei Xingfeng at the beginning was shot to death. Dafe roared, "You're all dead. I'm going to bathe Tiger Cliff Castle in blood. None of you can think of living." Xian Feng spoke coldly. "In your mother's bullshit dreams. Fuck you." He still did not have a way to release Lei Lunley. He could only rely on the short spear to transmit Lei Lunley. After all, his training days were too short. Until now, he only had 50 Lei Lunley, not even 100 Luan. He was only a small Luan master. Dafe, on the other hand, had already reached the power of 100 Luan and was already 100 Luan master. Xian Feng's only advantage was Lei Lunley, which could slow down the opponent's movements and suppress their strength. Dafe's best Hua Lunley was followed by Silver Lunley. It could increase the toughness and sharpness of metal. The two Lunley added together exceeded 100 Luan. Therefore, Dafe's Hua Lunley was higher than Lei Xingfeng, about 10 Luan. His level as 100 Luan master was also higher than Lei Xingfeng's. The more they fought, the hotter it became. Dafe's spear emitted a strong red glow. In less than a minute, Lead Eagles hunters were continuously killed. Dafe became more and more impatient and shouted, "You guys go! Quickly go!" Lead Eagles hunters were already surrounded and could not retreat. They could only form a circular formation and desperately resist the attacks of Tiger Cliff's hunters. Under Songyu's command, Tiger Cliff Castle's hunters besieged the enemy from the front and arranged for a dozen hunters to shoot arrows from the back. Screams continued to ring out. Within a few minutes, at least a dozen hunters from Lead Eagles were injured or killed. The sound of horns kept ringing out. The hunters from Lead Eagles kept blowing their horns to summon more people. Songyu shouted, "Kill the person who blew the whistle." Over a dozen hunters simultaneously shot their arrows. Even if that person's leather armor wasn't bad, it couldn't protect every part of his body. In an instant, that person became like a hedgehog. The most fatal arrow was shot, but it was unknown who shot it, but it pierced through his left eye, instantly killing him. A heavily injured hunter on the side picked up his whistle and blew it with all his might. Another wave of arrows flew over, and that person was also shot into a hedgehog. Dafe was like a madman, roaring and attacking. Lei Xingfeng was also abnormally violent. After fighting for so long, he had also gone crazy. that kind of happiness, that kind of feeling, that kind of trembling feeling made him extremely obsessed. Therefore, his roars were even louder than Dafei's, and the strength of his attacks were even crazier than Dafei's. That kind of reckless violence was quite scary. Kudashin did not participate in the attack on the hunters of Lead Eagle. Instead, he paid attention to Lei Xingfeng. If Lei Xingfeng could not hold on, he would not hesitate to jump in to save him. When he saw Lei Xingfeng's violent attacks and unrestrained roars, he was stunned. This child was simply too scary, too damn scary. Kushur also did not attack the hunters of Lead Eagle. He stood together with Ku Dashin, ready to attack at any time. As for Kunanshan, the three of them watched Lei Xingfeng grow up. How could they abandon him and hide on the side? The three of them were extremely shocked. It was the first time they saw a child who could fight so violently. Kunanshan could not help but say, this child, how can he be so crazy? Kushur only said one word, crazy. Ku Dashin laughed bitterly. Usually he is a very quiet child. Who would have thought that he would be so wild and crazy? AI, don't say. I really admire him. Kunanshan said, looks like a phone will have a hard time winning. AI, it's going to rain. Kudashin said uneasily, I don't know how many more people of Lead Eagle will come. I don't understand why they are so crazy this time. This is Tiger Cliff Castle's territory. Kushur said, a phone will not lose. At that moment, a whistle sounded from afar. The first whistle was still very far away, but the second whistle was already clear. The only thought in everyone's mind was that it was fast. Sangyu shouted, finish them! Suddenly, countless arrows were shot. A few strong hunters of Tiger Cliff threw short spears. In an instant, the hunters of Lead Eagle fell to the ground. Sangyu relaxed a little and shouted, everyone retreat to me. Afong, come back. Lei Xingfeng was having a good time fighting. How could he listen to Sangyu's words? He ignored them and continued to attack crazily. No matter if it was Dafei or Lei Xingfeng, both of them were injured. Dafei's back was cut open by a short spear, and Lei Xingfeng's arm was injured by Dafei's spear. Both of them had lunli, so they relied on their lunli to seal the wound. Not much blood flowed out, but even so, both of them were blinded by anger. Lei Xingfeng's short spear was like a hammer, smashing down with all his strength. Dafei raised his spear with both hands to block. It was not that he didn't want to change moves, but that Lei Xingfeng's spear was too fast. He couldn't move at all and could only take it head-on. Every time he smashed down, his whole body would feel numb and the spear would bend. The whistle sounded again. A person flew down from the treetops like a big bird. He saw the Lead Eagle hunter lying on the ground and shouted, Dafei, you idiot! Dafei used all his strength. His lunli exploded, and his body suddenly straightened. Both of his hands held the already bent spear and shouted, Open! Chapter 20. Clang! Both of their weapons were shaken off at the same time. Lei Xingfeng was shaken back and couldn't stop himself. Dafei took this opportunity to get rid of the entanglement. He flew back to the man's side and said, Uncle, I've been entangled. I didn't think Tiger Cliff Castle would have so many hunters. The man stared at Lei Xingfeng and said, Dafei, you've been entangled by a kid. Dafei's face turned red, and he said, Uncle, he's also a Lunli practitioner, and his strength isn't bad. The man said, Bullshit. How long can he train? How long have you been training? You've been training for 10 years, and you're 100 Luan master. How can you fight with a little Luan master who just started training? Dafei couldn't help but defend himself. He has a single attribute, lightning wheel potential. How the fuck can I compare to him? He was also angry. Even if you are my uncle, you can't blame me without distinguishing between right and wrong. The man's face showed a shocked expression and said, "Are you sure?" Dafe said, "I'm sure. Of course I'm F asterisk king sure." He was really angry. After fighting for so long, finally an elder came, and he had to teach him a lesson. The man suddenly laughed and said, "Do you know that in this world there's an organization called Wheel of Punishment?" Dafe said, "I've heard of it. I think it's, an underground organization." The man said happily, "They specialize in buying kids with high potential. They use a lot of money to buy them. And they also sell the corresponding training methods." Dafe said, "If the kid who was sold comes back, wouldn't we be in trouble?" He almost immediately understood what his uncle meant. He wanted to catch Lei Xingfeng and sell him. He didn't oppose this, but he was worried that with Lei Xingfeng's potential, once he went to that organization, they would be in trouble. The man smiled and said, "That's an underground organization. Once you go in, don't even think about coming out. Otherwise, who would dare to sell them a kid with good potential?" The two of them talked without restraint, completely ignoring the hundreds of hunters from Tiger Cliff Castle. The man took a step forward and said, "Little brat, I'll give you a choice. One is to obediently follow me, and I'll let your people go. Two is to kill all of your people and capture you. Make your choice. With your small Lewin Master standard, no matter how good your potential is, it is impossible for you to fight with 1,000 Lewin Master." All the hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle were enraged. Lei Xingfeng sneered, "Such arrogance! Who the hell are you?" A bolt of lightning pierced the heavens and the earth. With a crack of thunder, heavy rain poured down. The rain was extremely heavy. When the raindrops hit their faces, they would feel a trace of pain. Thunder rumbled in the sky, and lightning struck horizontally, drawing a dazzling brilliance in the sky. "Looks like you've chosen the second option. That's fine too. Our lead eagles lost so many hunters. Killing these Tiger Cliff hunters is just a way to accompany them in death." Lei Xingfeng said, "Uncle Ku, give me the short spear." Ku Dashin walked over and pulled out the last short spear. He whispered, "A phone, find a chance to escape." He wasn't stupid and knew that this time they were in big trouble. Lei Xingfeng whispered, "When I make my move, Uncle Ku, you guys run. Go home and tell Ai. Remember, this is very important." The reason why he asked Ku Dashin for the short spear was to say this. The man sneered and didn't stop Lei Xingfeng from taking the weapon. He turned to Dafe and said, "I'll go capture the kid. You're in charge of killing the hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle. Remember, don't let a single one go. Kill them all." Ku Dashin hesitated. Lei Xingfeng whispered, "Uncle Ku, you have to listen to me." His eyes revealed a trace of pleading. "Okay, I promise you." Ku Dashin wasn't a reckless person. He was very smart. He heard the conversation between Dafe and the man clearly and realized the severity of the situation. However, he knew that the opponent didn't plan to kill Lei Xingfeng directly. He had a guess in his heart. If a phone was so powerful, then A Feng's grandfather shouldn't be too bad. He even had a thought in his heart that maybe A Feng's grandfather was a hermit expert. The man said, "Kid, don't even think about running. You can't escape." He glanced at the hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle and suddenly shouted, "Dafe, do it!" As he said that, he had already rushed towards Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng didn't back down and also rushed towards the man. He waved the short spear, and in a flash, he sent Lei Lunli into the short spear. This time, he used all of his strength. In an instant, the short spear emitted countless arcs of electricity. In an instant, the tip of the spear condensed into an electric current and flashed out. The man yelled, "Good!" His body flashed, with a golden light. In the dark rain, it was very eye-catching. The power of the golden Lewin. The power of the golden Lewin was the power of the earth. Its defense was the most abnormal. Lei Xingfeng had only cultivated 50 Lei Lunli and could only be called a small Lewin master. Da Fei had more than 100 Lewin and could be called a 100 Lewin master. The man's body condensed an obvious golden halo. This showed that this guy was a genuine 1,000 Lewin master. He was much stronger than Lei Xingfeng. Peng. Before Lei Xingfeng could see the man's movement, he was hit by the man's palm on the short spear. That unparalleled power passed through, and in an instant, Lei Xingfeng flew out. In the air, Lei Xingfeng felt as if he was trampled by thousands of bulls. The pain in his body was uncontrollable. He spat out a mouthful of black blood, and the short spear in his hand flew out. Seeing this, the man laughed. "Little guy, just now you didn't listen to my advice. You just had to endure this pain. Now you are just like an ant. Obediently accept your fate, and accept your death." After saying this, he rushed towards Lei Xingfeng like lightning. Kacha! A bolt of lightning struck down from the sky and instantly hit Lei Xingfeng, who was flying in the air. The man was so scared that he quickly stopped. What a joke! He couldn't withstand the lightning and fire in the sky. That was lightning and thunder. If it hit him, even if he was 1,000 Lewin master, he would become a charred corpse. Lei Xingfeng was stunned by this attack. At this time, a bolt of lightning struck down from the sky and directly hit his body. He wailed in his heart, "Damn it!" adding insult to injury. "I am unlucky." What happened? Chapter 21. When the lightning struck his body, a huge amount of energy entered his body. In an instant, it was as if he had eaten a huge tonic. His body had a huge amount of energy, and he felt as if he was going to explode from this energy. Before he even landed on the ground, he started to madly circulate the violent thunder skill. In just a few seconds after he landed, his Lei Lunli increased crazily. Just as he landed on the ground, another bolt of lightning struck down from the sky. That person retreated again. This lightning was too scary. This gave Lei Xingfeng a chance to take a breather. The Lei Lunli in his body was like a tsunami. In an instant, it exceeded 100 luns, and it was still increasing rapidly. Xian Feng felt as if he was a balloon that had been blown up. The violent lightning that had entered his body after he had crazily activated the violent thunder technique. It had given him an unlimited amount of power to increase his Lei Lunli, and he had the urge to crazily release it. That person was shocked to find that Lei Xingfeng was unscathed. It was just that there was a large amount of lightning dancing on his body. Both of his eyes had turned completely silver. It seemed as if they were still shining like a beast in the night. Lei Xingfeng's injuries were almost healed at the same time as his Lei Lunli increased. He roared again and pounced forward. That person sneered and said, "You're looking for death." The two of them collided and fiercely punched each other. Boom! Lei Xingfeng kept retreating. His whole body was flashing with lightning. Step by step, he retreated. Compared to the first time when he was sent flying, he was much stronger. That person, on the other hand, was suffering. On the golden, while protecting his body, countless lightning flashed. This caused him to tremble for a few seconds, almost breaking his golden wheel. Da Fei also rushed out. He was dealing with the hunters from Tiger Cliff Castle. The power of a 100 Lewin master was not something normal people could deal with. In just a few minutes, 7 or 8 hunters from Tiger Cliff Castle had fallen. The people here, especially the hunters, had all grown up through countless battles. Every one of them was tenacious and did not fear death. This was because they knew that whether it was hunting or fighting, once they retreated, they would die very quickly. The hunters crazily attacked. Even if they couldn't kill you, they would at least bite off a piece of your flesh. Dafe had no choice but to be cautious. A few hunters even disregarded their own lives and crazily tried to hug him. He was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Although he killed the opponent, he didn't dare to be reckless. Under Tsongyu's command, the situation was temporarily stabilized. However, everyone knew that once Lei Xingfeng and that person joined forces with Dafe, none of the hunters present would be able to survive. Tsongyu's heart was on fire. This team of close to 200 people was the elite of Tiger Cliff Castle. If they were all killed by lead eagles, Tiger Cliff Castle would definitely not be able to survive this year's winter. Tiger Cliff Castle would really be finished. Every hunter hoped that Lei Xingfeng could win. However, everyone knew that it was almost impossible. Ku Dashan arranged for Ku Nanshan to return. He and Ku Shi did not escape. Instead, they joined up with the rest of the team to fight against Dafe. Hundreds of experienced hunters crazily defended. Even if Dafe was 100 Luan master, he could not do anything. He could only choose to fight. His body was like lightning darting back and forth. Only when he found an opportunity would he be able to injure one person. The battle between Lei Xingfeng and that person had reached its climax. That person really couldn't understand why the little guy was getting stronger and stronger. At the beginning, he was defeated by Lei Xingfeng. However, after fighting for so long, Lei Xingfeng was able to advance and retreat. They were evenly matched. How could he know that after 2 lightning strikes, the little guy's body had almost reached 1,000 Luan power? Both of them were fighting barehanded. Lei Xingfeng's hair was disheveled. In the rain, he looked like a madman. Both of their bodies were shining. One was gold, the other was silver. In the dusky sky, they were very eye-catching. Every time he was injured, Lei Xingfeng would be saved by Lei Xingfeng. However, as the battle progressed, Lei Xingfeng was gradually at a disadvantage. To be able to fight like this, not only was that person surprised, but Lei Xingfeng was also quite satisfied. He was looking for an opportunity to be struck by lightning again. He believed that as long as he was struck by lightning again, he would definitely be able to break through to 1,000 Luan master. At that time, that person would definitely not be his opponent. One must know that this was a thunderstorm, which was Lei Xingfeng's home ground. No wonder Grandpa Thunderstorm wanted Lei Xingfeng to train in a thunderstorm. He said that he would die if he was struck by lightning. Lei Xingfeng could no longer imagine that he was not afraid of being struck by lightning. Furthermore, being struck by lightning could increase his strength. A thought flashed through his mind. If he could escape today's disaster, he would train in a thunderstorm in the future. He should be able to increase his strength quickly. He believed that not long after, he would be able to reach Wan Luan Shi. He might even be able to train directly to a mill-wheel master. Following the increase in Lei Lunli, Lei Xingfeng was gradually unable to control his violent emotions. The more he fought, the more unrestrained he became. His moves also became bigger and bigger. He became more and more fearless of death. Every move would cause both sides to suffer. The more the person fought, the more sullen he became. He did not dare to fight as hard as Lei Xingfeng. Therefore, as the fight continued, Lei Xingfeng actually started to gain the upper hand. Dafe injured another 2 people. However, he also discovered that every time he injured the opponent, he would also receive a bit of damage. Although the damage was small, it accumulated, and he felt that he could not take it anymore. From time to time, he would steal glances at the person. He was shocked to find out that Lei Xingfeng was actually suppressing his uncle. Due to the shock, his movements became slightly slower. After being noticed by Tsangyu, Tsangyu ordered the hunters to continuously attack, causing him to suffer quite a bit. Both sides were in a stalemate. The person gritted his teeth and said, "Little bastard, I did not expect you to be so hard to deal with. Fuck, I don't believe I can't kill you." His sleeves loosened, and the leather arm guard on his arm suddenly fell off. With a shake of his wrist, a thin chain flew out and instantly wrapped around Lei Xingfeng's arm. He heard him shout, "Come here." Lei Xingfeng could not stand properly and was dragged to his side. He saw the person's hand forming a claw and grabbing towards his neck. He also shouted, "Who's afraid of you?" Pa! With a splash of water, his hand fiercely clasped the other's hand. The two hands clasped together, and suddenly the two of them were entangled together. A thought flashed through his mind. This is a Luanqi. The person's Lunli was deeper than Lei Xingfeng's. In this kind of head-on fight, Lei Xingfeng was at a disadvantage. The person sneered, "Little brat, I don't believe that you can block my Lunli." He activated the thin chain on his wrist, and in an instant, it wrapped around Lei Xingfeng's waist and extended towards his legs. The two of them were entangled together, and the person's heavy breathing could even reach Lei Xingfeng's face. Both of their faces were distorted, and their expressions were ferocious as they stared at each other with their eyes wide open. Lei Xingfeng suddenly laughed. The person was shocked because this change was too shocking. Just a moment ago, his face was still distorted, but now he suddenly revealed a smile. It was as strange as it could get. "Hey!" Lei Xingfeng did not spit saliva, but spat out a lightning needle. The person watched Lei Xingfeng open his mouth, and he clearly saw a silver light shoot out from Lei Xingfeng's mouth. At that moment, his heart almost stopped beating, and a huge sense of danger surged in his heart. This kind of danger instinct was something that every Lunli cultivator had. In a flash, his mind flashed. This is a F** King Luanqi. He tried his best to turn his head, but it was too close. If it was a little further, he would have had a chance to dodge. The lightning needle shot into the person's left cheek and flew out from the right. Because of the urgency of the situation, even Lei Xingfeng could not control it perfectly, so when the lightning needle hit the person's cheek, he did not have time to detonate it. Luckily, it did not detonate, or else he would not have been able to escape. This was a one-time use Luanqi made by his grandfather. Once it exploded, no one within a 10-meter radius would be able to survive. But even if it did not detonate, the lightning needle pierced through the person's cheek, creating a hole the size of an egg. As for the person's teeth and tongue, they were all broken. This caused the person to jump out in pain. Lei Xingfeng's body slightly bent, and he jumped out of the way. The lightning needle exploded not far away, and in a flash, a circle of lightning spread out. All the plants within the circle of the lightning needle were instantly turned into ashes. Everyone present felt a chill down their spine, especially Da Fei. He could be considered someone who knew what was good for him, and he said in horror, "Luanqi! One-time use Luanqi." Immediately after, he saw his uncle's miserable state. He no longer cared about killing people, and quickly ran over. The person covered his mouth, and blood spurted out. The rain hit his face, and his body was completely dyed red with blood. Da Fei carried the person and quickly ran towards the forest. His speed was so fast that no one could react. It was not that Lei Xingfeng did not want to chase, but he was being strangled half to death by the person's thin chain. He was still gasping for breath. He was also afraid, not of the person, but of the explosion range of the lightning needle. If it exploded in the person's mouth, even if the person would not survive, how would he be able to escape? It would really be a mutual destruction. He already understood that using the lightning needle was too risky. After Dafei and the other person escaped, the hunters of Tiger Cliff Castle burst into cheers. To be able to chase away these two vicious people, Tiger Cliff Castle could be considered to have escaped a disaster. Sangyu was almost paralyzed on the ground. After all, he was old, although he did not participate in the battle just now, and only hid behind the crowd to command, but even so, he had exhausted all his energy. If it wasn't for an experienced hunter like him, the hunters present would have lost at least a dozen people, or even dozens of people. Dafei's strength was definitely above normal people. Lei Xingfeng was also exhausted. Just now, he purposely let the person close the distance. He fought to his heart's content until the opponent used his Luanqi. Only then did he realize that he also had a Luanqi, so he purposely let the opponent succeed. Only after the opponent used his Luanqi did he turn the situation around. Sitting on the ground, Lei Xingfeng buried his head in his arms and carefully recalled the battle just now. The hunters in the castle saw Lei Xingfeng sit down and thought he was injured, so they all gathered around. Sangyu resisted the tiredness and came in front of Lei Xingfeng. He squatted down and asked, "Feng, how is it?" "Okay, I am really hungry." After not eating for 2 days, he was still growing. He was at the stage where he could eat the most. Thunderstorm walked in. He said, "Feng." His eyes showed a trace of worry. Lei Xingfeng said, "Yi, it's okay. I got a blessing in disguise." Thunderstorm said, "What do you mean?" Lei Xingfeng said, "I almost became 1,000 Luan master." Thunderstorm said in shock, "What?" Lei Xingfeng said, "When I was fighting with that person, I was struck by lightning twice. Somehow, I gained a large amount of Lei Lunli." Thunderstorm said in disbelief, How is this possible?" He couldn't help but smile bitterly. It was best to train Lei Lunli during a thunderstorm, but it was definitely not to be struck by lightning, especially for someone like Lei Xingfeng, who had just started training. Being struck by lightning would still kill him, but this little fellow was not only fine, but his strength also increased rapidly. This was something that he couldn't understand. Lei Xingfeng said, I can't be struck by lightning, but how could I?" For a moment, he didn't know what to say. In terms of understanding of Lunli, he was thousands of miles away from his grandfather. There was no way to compare. Thunderstorm fell into deep thought. At this time, Lei Xian Yao came in with a small bowl. She said, "Brother, the soup is here." It was a bowl of beef soup with a lot of tapioca powder. Lei Xian Yao held a wooden spoon in her hand and said, "Brother, I'll feed you." When she was sick before, what she enjoyed the most was Lei Xingfeng feeding her. It was rare for Lei Xingfeng to lie down, so she also learned to feed Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng smiled. Okay, let her Yao Yao feed me. Brother will be a lazy person this time." He rubbed the little girl's head out of habit. He liked this little sister to the bone. In fact, he treated this little sister more like a daughter. In his previous life, he also had a daughter. In this life, he had another little sister. He doted on her just as much. She fed Lei Xingfeng spoonful by spoonful. The little girl's expression was very serious. Very quickly, the bowl of soup was finished. The little girl showed a satisfied expression and smiled. "Brother, wait a moment. I'll bring more meat to feed you. Good boy." Lei Xingfeng almost spat out the last mouthful of soup. This was what he said when he fed his little sister. He didn't expect the little girl to return it so naturally. "Pa!" Thunderstorm suddenly slapped his thigh and said, "Yes, this explains it. Ha 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 ha." Lei Xian Yao put down the bowl and hugged Thunderstorm's arm. She shook it and said, Ayi, what's wrong? Thunderstorm laughed. Ha! Ayi thought of something. Yao Yao, Ayi is fine. Yao Yao, be good. Late Xian Yao was relieved. She got up and left the room with the bowl. Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, Ayi, what did you think of? Was it a lightning strike? Oh, right. Ayi, have you been struck by lightning before? The old man shook his head and said, I have never been struck by lightning. He suddenly looked like a fool. He stared blankly at Lei Xingfeng. After a while, he shouted, A phone. Lei Xingfeng was shocked. Ayi, what's wrong? The old man's face suddenly showed an uncontrollable joy. He said without thinking, It's worth a try. It's worth a try. Ha ha. I can't think of anything else. Lei Xingfeng was stunned. At this moment, the old man seemed to be glowing with youth. His spirit was completely different. In the past, the old man had a sense of lethargy, like the sunset. Now, his spirit was comparable to that of a young man. Ayi, what's worth a try? The old man said mysteriously, A phone. I can't tell you now. Ha, wait until I test it. Ha, ha, ha. Lei Xingfeng's hair stood on end from the old man's laughter. He said, Ayi, Ayi. The old man stopped laughing and said, A phone, what? You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.